Erik Scott de Bie, author, designer, professional game master, coming to you with a request and a special opportunity. You see, some years ago I created a superhero universe called Justice Vengeance. It's a updated, modern, realistic take on superheroes, inspired by such comics as Brian Michael Bendis' Powers or Robert Kirkman's Invincible. And yes, it does have a little bit of the violence and the profanity of Garth Ennis's The Boys. The first related story that I ever published in this universe, one reviewer very memorably remarked on the fact that the lead character drops two F-bombs on the first page, which, to be clear, is a feature, not a bug. I mean, it is me, and I am a big fan of kind of rough around the edges sorts of characters. Her name is Lady Vengeance. She has lots of vices and flaws. You'll love her. But you see, ultimately, while this is dark and cynical, again, me, it's still a superhero story. It's still about people struggling against their inner demons, finding strength in each other, and trying to do the right thing. It's about justice, and it's about vengeance, and I'd like you to be a part of it. Go check out my Kickstarter, see the rewards, and come with me on this journey. I really appreciate your support. Thank you.
Hello, friends and enemies, heroes and villains. Welcome to Epic Realms Off the Pod. If you couldn't guess, our guest today is amazing author and game designer Erik Scott de Bie. Welcome back, my friend. How are you doing?
Good to be back. I'm doing pretty well. It's very stormy and dark and cold out in Seattle today, but I'm nice and warm here in my studio.
Nice, awesome. Thank you and welcome everybody who is in here for the show. We're going to get started with our topics here in just a few bit. For those that are new to the stream or to this particular new show, we're going to cover a topic and we're going to talk about it for about 20 minutes. You guys can go ahead and chat with us as well. We'll probably see some of your stuff. If we miss your chats, we'll get to it afterwards, after the 20 minutes is up. But we will try and see and read some of them along the way as well. But we're just going to chat and discuss the topics at hand while we do it. And then near the end, we're going to talk about the Kickstarter and
Awesome.
and get into it with that. But a lot of our topics are also a little bit geared towards the subject matter of the Kickstarter as well. So we were just talking about that. I'm like, what's the name of the word? It's in front of me. I can read it. What is it? It's Kickstarter. That's it. My brain, dear God.
Well, okay. Take it easy, Nick, because you just got over COVID.
Yeah.
That thing messes with your head a little bit. You'll be okay.
Hopefully. So our first subject is role-playing superheroes. And I want to pull up our we had a conversation about some of these earlier on about like, what should our topics be? What should we talk about? And some of them had a little bit more detail to them than just the words, because I can only fit so much in the words. So I want to pull up our detailed on some of them. That way we can get those covered. And oh my gosh, I forgot how long our email chain and string was here.
All right. So while he's doing that,
all right.
The Kickstarter is for Libations for the Dead, which is the cover over my right shoulder. I think that's my right side. Anyway, my right, your left. And that's the first book. And then the second book is called Public Enemy, named after the band, not the fact that Black people are a public enemy. That was kind of an odd timing, but when is any timing good in America?
Right.
And that's Fallen Angel is the third book. And this is a cool series. I have like 6 books planned, but those are the first 3. Those covers are by Claudio Pozas, who is he's a well-known fantasy artist, does Magic, D&D, Pathfinder kind of stuff. He's really good. Highly recommend you check him out. Did I vamp enough for you, Nick?
Yes, you did. And excellent. the one with the who's the blonde-haired character on your?
That is a girl. Her name is Angel or Angelica or Angelique, depending on what she feels like saying for the day. And she is this character's niece. And she is a super fast, super strong, super durable, and clumsy as hell. So she causes lots of collateral damage wherever she does heroing.
So I saw the artist posted an older picture of that they drew, and then the new
Mhm.
one. I was like, wow. Like I looked at the older picture, I'm like, that's a really good drawing, and then I see the new one. I was like, oh my gosh, it's like night and day
It's
difference.
remarkable, isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah, no, Claudio is constantly evolving and getting better and better and better every year. He's usually at Gen Con, not always. I don't think he's going this year. But I mean, being able to check in and see the stuff that he's selling is pretty fantastic. And he maintains a pretty good web presence too. So I'm sure we can find a link to his stuff at some point.
yeah. Maybe one of my mods can go look him up and get a link for his site for us.
Yeah,
That would be
definitely.
awesome. I know two of my moderators are on vacation, so right now I know we have. I think Lady the Fae is the only one that might be currently on, and she is on a cruise.
Aha,
But
yeah.
went out of her way to come and join because she was very excited about not missing this show. So our first topic is role playing superheroes. You did because you worked on Cobalt City. Is that like where the main focus of your role playing as superheroes is? And let me start the timer here. There it goes.
All right. So Cobalt City
Oh no.
is did something happen?
Yeah, I have a moderator thing where it's like links aren't allowed unless people are subscribed, but I will repost
Oh,
it. Go
that's
ahead.
fine. No worries. No
I
worries.
got it.
It's
Boom.
just yep, there you go. I was gonna subscribe and then you asked me a question and I'm like, okay, well, I'll answer the question, then we'll see about subscribing.
That's okay.
Yeah, you blocked me. It's all good. Anyway, so Cobalt City is yes, it is where I've done the most of my superhero gaming. But that is because it's really fun and really cool. Cobalt City started in the 90s as a gaming setting that was homebrewed setting for mutants and masterminds. Nathan Crowder is one of the original creators of Cobalt City, and he and Kai Ford, who I'm going to write a post about eventually, and a few other friends, basically made up this setting in the 90s for the Mutants and Masterminds game. And it went the way all campaigns do. It lasted for a while. People moved on. Life got in the way. But Nate never forgot about this setting, and he wanted to keep telling stories in it. He didn't make the mistake of, writing up his campaign as a novel, which a lot of gamers turned writers at least try to do at some point. Instead, Nate wrote stories about characters in the setting and continued to develop the setting. So none of his novels are exactly a campaign that he ran. They might have like moments that are reminiscent, like inside callbacks to things that happened in the game. And developing it this way has also allowed him and others of us to run games in the Cobalt City universe, either very connected, happening in Cobalt City itself using characters from his work, or kind of tangentially connected. We ran a masks game, for instance, called Agents of Awesome, which is the teen superhero team that Lady Vengeance was a part of when she was a teenager.
Okay.
And so I played a character called Girl Vengeance, which is just her, except 17.
Okay.
And like her names never don't sound like a euphemism for menstruation. Okay, that is always the case. she made bad calls as regards her superhero name, but it's still pretty cool. At least it sounded cool to a 90s goth punk.
Yeah.
Anyway, and we've also let's see, what systems did we use? We've used masks, we've used Cypher, I've used a 5e D&D hack to do this. All kinds of stuff. Sometimes
Nice.
I'm a player, sometimes I'm a GM. And developing it through the game has given me more love and appreciation for these characters. Several characters who appear in my novels were not part of my original plan for the novels, but they were part of the game, and I really liked them. And Vivienne, Lady Vengeance, developed a very strong relationship with them. So it only made sense in my head for
Yeah.
them to appear in the novel. So I don't want to spoil too much of it, but
Yeah.
there's good stuff. There's good stuff.
That's awesome. I played a lot of D&D, or not D&D. Well, I mean D&D too, but I played a lot of Mutants and Masterminds. I think that was my main superhero book. But before Mutants and Masterminds, they had a Marvel superheroes thing, and it had like this chart with like red
Phase
bars.
rip. Woo!
Yeah, and it's like
Yeah.
every time I saw that, my friends were like, "This is a great game." I'm like, It's not though, because they're like, well, why not? I'm like, I'm gonna play an infant. You can put my stats at whatever you want, but as long as I roll a 100, I can build that rocket ship. And they're always like, oh yeah, and they kind of always deflate at it. I'm like, that was always my issue. And then Mutants and Masterminds came out, and I was like, this is what I want for, you know, a more robust system it was kind of D&D, but it's also kind of do whatever you want
Right.
as as far as role playing goes. So, but we always played in a pre-exist, like it was always hard to come up with your own. For us, be like, why do we need to come up with our own superhero worlds? Because there are superhero worlds that we know that are so much better that we are free to play in and make it our own. You know, we can just pick a city that we're from, and it can be in the same universe as the X-Men, or the same universe as Batman, or the same universe as Spawn, or whatever. And then we don't really have to worry about that, and then we can add in all the little fun cameos we want.
It's a lot like gaming in a more traditional campaign setting,
Yeah.
like the Forgotten Realms
I
or
suppose, yeah.
Galarian in Pathfinder, right?
Yeah.
You have all the details that you could possibly need, but it also gives you some space to develop your own stuff and set in your own made up city, or just pick a city that's not very well developed and just go with it from there.
Yeah.
Justice Vengeance was not originally part of Cobalt City. It was an idea that I came up with long before I met Nate or had heard of Cobalt City. I initially thought it up in college, which for me was in the early 2000s. So about 20 years ago, I came up with this story, and many of the overarching themes and stories are the same, but fast forwarded 20 years.
Yeah.
In my original conception, Lady Vengeance was a superhero who was active in like the late 70s and early 80s.
Oh, okay.
And now she's active as a superhero in the 90s. And back when I originally thought it up, I was a 20-year-old kid. And I was like, yeah, if I make her like 40, wow, she's an old, grizzled,
Right.
experienced veteran. And now I'm 40, and I'm like, no, she's the most relatable character in the story. Yeah.
If you were to play her, like, if you were to play her, say, next week, would you play her the same as you did when you were 20?
Oh, absolutely not. No, absolutely not. I mean, unless, even if I was playing a younger version of her, which I did for many years, I played the teenage version of her. But I like to think that over my long gaming career, which is almost 30 years old now, I have developed and got a new appreciation for how people act, how you should portray women at the table rather than, what I did when I was a teenager, which is not to say that I was a raging sexist as a teenager. I mean, I'm a dude and I was a teenager. We're all raging sexists at the time. But my mother had two rules for us when we were gaming at my house, because we were always gaming at my house because we had a big table and my parents were very permissive, rather than the friends who were like, D&D leads to Satanism. You can't play that at our house.
Satanic Panic, yep.
And her two rules were, one, keep the language in check, and two, respect women and female characters. And one of those rules fucking stuck. So, yes, it has always been important to me to have a diversity of experience in my writing and in my gaming. Whether it's along a gender spectrum or it's a ethnic diversity, I do my best to include a rainbow of experience.
What are some of the other characters you played in like superhero or types of characters? I think it'd be more fun to say types of characters, because you've always got like the iconic, like, I've got super strength, and you build your powerhouse, or your, they have the little genres, your Batman, your Superman, your Wolverine, your Captain Americas.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. So Lady Vengeance, I have never actually played as a PC before. I've used her as an NPC, but Girl Vengeance, when she was a teenager, I did play her, and she has empathy-based powers. She can absorb people's emotions, particularly fear. That's the one she's best at, and then reshape it into physical objects, forceful blasts, psychic fuckery with somebody's head, for instance. She can project images of your greatest fear into your mind. She can take the shape of your greatest fear and fight against you as your greatest fear. All of these things. And that's only like the lower end of her powers. If she's possessed by the demon lord who's constantly trying to possess her, he is at least 8 or 10 times as powerful with her own powers as she is. So that's what she's constantly on the run from, is this demon trying to possess her. So when I played her in Masks, she used the doomed character archetype, which is kind of like your like Raven from the DC Teen Titans, for instance, a person who has a great deal of power, but there's some dark thing that's building up to overtake them. And so that's kind of what her story is like.
Okay.
I also played for a long time a minor supporting character in the Justice Vengeance universe, Yumi Kujikawa, who is the subject of a short story novella that is the first stretch goal for the campaign, actually. It's called We Are the Champions. She is at a fencing tournament. Now, her powers are kind of time and reflex based. Okay. She is an exceptional warrior, mostly because she has such fast reflexes and coordination. It's enhanced agility, but she can also slow down time around her in a sense, which like she speeds herself up regarding relative to other time. But she can only use that power for so long before she gets exhausted, right?
Yeah.
And that particular novella is about her struggles with, well, since she was a girl, all she has wanted to do is fence at the Olympics.
Right.
But she's a superhero. She has these superpowers that make her an inestimable fighter.
Yeah.
And is it really fair for her to compete when she has these powers? Can she stop herself from using these powers, for instance?
Right.
Is it fair if in her own head she's competing fairly? Or is that still cheating? And what happens if it comes out that she has these powers in part of the competition? What does that mean for the greater community as a whole? So that's what that story is about. Also, there's a rival, an international assassin who has powers much like her, who also enters into the competition for nefarious reasons. And Yumi's like, well, I got to stop her because she's not going to care about cheating. Also, she's really hot, so we got to kind of have some fighting going on. Anyway, she's a mess, and it is a great story. And I'm hoping that we unlock it with the stretch goal.
Stretch goals.
So
yeah, that's awesome. I played. I think my most obviously playing characters that are kind of based on other characters I've done, but I think my favorite one that I feel is a little unique is a character that was called Ghost, and Ghost is like, you've seen the Matrix movies, right?
Yep.
You know the ghost like glitches in the game that are the ghost. It was like based kind of off of their powers, but then more of the, okay, well, what if they could just turn into a ghost or do things that ghosts do? And he ended up. I'm a sucker for a good anti-hero or a good like reluctant hero. So he was very much like the I'm not really a good guy. He's kind of a con man sort of character, and he like tries to swindle people out of their houses and then buys them on the real estate. That's kind of how his backstory started. And of course there was the whole, well, you know, the big super good guy of the universe is like, you know, you could do better with these powers, you could help save the world. And of course, you know, he's the con artist. He's like, yeah, I totally could. Look at all this awesome technology these superheroes have. I could really get my hands on some of that and sell it and make a good bunch of money. And eventually he cons himself into thinking he's a superhero, and he helps him along. And I'm like, to me, it was a really unique type character to play when everybody was, you know, I'm the Superman, I'm the Flash, I'm the, you know, whatever those archetypes are that were out there. So it's definitely nice to have, and to have universes you can walk into and like, you know, like Justice Vengeance, where you can read these and be like, hey, I don't have to do DC, I don't have to do Marvel, I can use this world, I can use that world, the characters are already there for me. And that's what we did. We took the Mutants and Masterminds world and we're like, we're going to play in there instead of Marvel or DC, and we're going to play in the one that they've built. And I think that's a cool thing that people can do also with like the Cobalt City and the Justice Vengeance universe.
Absolutely. And yeah, that's kind of the thing. Like Cobalt City was originally just a place for Nate to write stories in. And then, you know, he befriended a bunch of us writers in Seattle and we're like, hey, what's this thing that you got? Because that sounds really cool. Tell us about it.
Yeah.
And it just inspired some stories and now it's blossoming.
Yeah.
Like it's not the MCU, okay? Like
But,
we don't
don't
have
you wish it
blockbuster
could
movies
be?
or anything. But like there's a certain amount of depth there. There's depth and it's spreading. The characters in this universe tend to be not two or one or two dimensional. They tend to be like three dimensional. They have goals, they have powers, they have weaknesses, but they also have different motivations and they have different dramas that they have to deal with. And they're going about their lives. They're trying to live a normal life. And their powers sometimes get in the way, sometimes help them. Oftentimes they're just kind of an inconvenience.
Yeah.
Like for instance, I was talking about a girl being really, really clumsy. She's very strong, but she's also very, very clumsy. No one ever taught her how to use her powers very well. So she doesn't know how to fight. All she really knows how to do is throw herself at people like a wrecking ball, which is pretty effective.
Yeah.
But like if you have to do something that requires fine coordination or like use a computer or just maybe not crush a monitor when you're trying to turn it on, she is not your girl. Like she is not good at those things. She puts her fist through Orestes's TV screen one time, and just because she was just trying to turn it on, and she's like, "Oh, I'm sorry," and he's like, "It's okay. It was really old. I'll get a new one." Yeah, I mean, I really like that kind of thing. Because this story is about superheroes trying to fit into the world. The world is a little bit shaped around them. In this world, superheroes are like celebrities, a bit like they might be in The Boys, for instance, or which a more direct and more immediate influence on me was Bendis's Powers comics, which are a detective story investigating murders involving superheroes, many of whom are like retired superheroes who, you know, got into drugs or some kind of crime, and now somebody killed one of them, and now these two people investigate it and try to stay out of the crossfire of superhero powers. And that story, reading those comics in the early 2000s, was really what inspired this whole universe of mine. And I see that over the last 20 years or so, we have really moved toward embracing that concept. The Boys embraces it, for instance.
Yeah.
It takes it in a much more, it goes farther than I would. Like The Boys, to some extent, is shock for shock's sake.
Yeah.
Garth Ennis notoriously hates superheroes, and he is writing a world in which superheroes are just the worst. Like every depravity you can think of, they just come up with something worse in the next episode. And he just kind of kept writing that until he was done, until he got it out of his system.
Yeah.
And
I kind of feel that Watchmen kind of was the offshoot. Like that, Watchmen was really the antithesis that started it all.
Yes, Watchmen kind of started us off, and then we saw different connections, different reactions to it throughout the late '80s and the '90s and the 2000s. I think to an extent, Marvel Ultimates. You remember that run that started in 2000 and then kind of went from there.
A little bit, yeah.
The Ultimate Universe was. Well, the idea was that they were retelling the origin stories of many of their superheroes through a modern lens, to make them more relatable to a modern audience. And it was a big hit. Not all the comics were such a huge hit, but many of them very were. Like Ultimate Spider-Man and Ultimate X-Men were both very successful. And the run of Ultimates was pretty good too. They were that universe's version of the Avengers.
Yeah.
And I will say that about those comics, the characters' flaws were basically dialed up to not to 11, but to like 8, right?
Yeah.
Captain America has, in the Ultimates universe, become a jingoistic, America's right all the time sort of character, because he comes from the 40s and has this very cynical attitude as regards American values. We are better than everyone else.
Yeah.
Nobody understands us, and I am going to enforce that. It's a very imperialistic sort of view. That's an example. The X-Men, because the X-Men were full of flaws themselves.
Yeah.
Well, all those got dialed up, and it's just more drama and more betrayal and heartbreak, and it was still pretty good. It was very gripping. There are some choices that the Ultimate Universe made, particularly toward the end, that were, let's just say there were choices, and move on from there.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I loved that concept of like modernizing superheroes. Oh,
that is the end of the role-playing superheroes conversation.
Excellent.
Except for the chat, which we have a lot of people in here, not a lot of people chatting. Guys, do you have any people in the chat? Do you have any superhero types or characters that you want to play or wanted to play or liked to play? Go ahead and throw your stuff in the chat, or if you're just listening in. Some people are like just hanging out in the background doing laundry or whatever, or on a cruise. I'm jealous. You been on a cruise before, Eric?
I have not been on a cruise before. I've been on big boats before, but never overnight on a boat, I don't think. Sounds like a cool thing.
They have a role-playing cruise where it's just like a RPG cruise where you just go. It's like a convention on a cruise, and that's all you do is role play and hang out with game designers and stuff. It's like, that would be kind of fun. That would be like Gen Con on a boat. I'm in.
It did sound really neat until the era of COVID. And then I'm like, okay, right. We're just going to put all of the COVID into this one ship. I mean, Gen Con is a little bit like Twitch. That too.
I didn't know there was a chat. Well, now you know there's a chat. Welcome on in.
Hey, welcome. I'm pretty sure Anxiety Goblin is an artist who does some Justice Vengeance stuff for me, and yeah, her work is pretty great.
Awesome. Well, welcome on in. Just listening and really missing Mutants and Masterminds. What's your favorite Mutants and Masterminds character, Sir All? Yes, I had a couple of friends that did it. I'm guessing the cruise. They loved the cruise. Cool, cool. Mm-hmm. Awesome. Well, welcome in, everybody. And now you know Anxiety Goblin. There's a chat.
Yeah, I see you, Kelsey. Anyway. Oh, man. So she just produced this really great image for me for this universe that I haven't shared yet, but will. So back to Kickstarter. You get to see these cool things. It's full of exclusive
I saw your
art and
update
stuff.
yesterday on Kickstarter where you showed, because you had started like, or did like a comic book thing for this story. And I was like, man, I kind of want to just see the comic book as well. Let's what's the stretch goal for the full comic to get released and published?
Oh my God. All right. Well, okay. So,
and is that before or after the audiobook?
8 years ago, I tried to launch a comic book version, and it just, like, I produced the first volume, or the first issue of the first volume, and it covers about the first 10 chapters of the book of Libations for the Dead. And it was really fun, but it was also pretty expensive. I am not much of an artist myself. I hired it out, and I'm pretty sure my artistic team, because it's 8 years later, is on to new and better things. But who knows? If I hit huge numbers, I might look into it.
Okay, cool. You paint with
words. Aw, that's so nice.
Well,
thanks, Kelsey.
It's not wrong. I mean, you wouldn't have all the accolades and all the other authors that are super. I mean, almost every author that is in like the D&D gaming genre, the fantasy genre, that you know that I know, almost every single one of them has been constantly plugging this Kickstarter for you. I see him pop up on all my feeds constantly. I'm like, yeah. And I'm like going through, I'm like liking all the Erik Scott de Bie promos from Richard Byers and Ed Greenwood and Chris Jackson and like. So
Yeah, they're
how does
good
that
folks.
how does that feel to have all those amazing other authors just be so totally 100% on your side?
You mean the people I grew up reading?
Yeah, yeah.
Very good. Like the first time I went to Gen Con was 2007 or 2008. I think it was 2007. And I just found myself sitting down at a table just ringed with Forgotten Realms writers who I had been reading since I was a child. And just like, why am I here? I shouldn't be here. Oh, wait, I did publish a Realms novel. It was amazing.
Yeah.
Like, you know, they say don't meet your heroes, but sometimes it's okay to meet your heroes.
Yeah. Especially the all the people we just mentioned. They're just all
Absolutely.
amazing people. And yourself. Oftentimes
Very
I'll
good.
sit here doing the show, and I told you this off last time we did I think we did something with Ed and Chris Jackson for the Game Masters Workshop, and afterwards I was like, you know, guys, I often don't feel like I'm putting on a show and I have the podcast and you guys are all amazing and I know what I do is good, but I sometimes feel imposter syndrome when I'm sitting there afterwards and like we just don't stop talking for like an hour and a half, 2 hours, and we're just shooting the shit. And I get off and I get done and I go talk to my wife. I'm like, we were just sitting there shitting because bullshitting, and I look back and I go, that is so weird. We were talking about running a game where it's just the four of us role playing, and I was like, how do I get in on this mix? Like I'm not an author. I'm just a podcast host. I'm just an interview host. And so I get that, what you were just talking about at Gen Con, that first time there. So yeah, and even when I went to Gen Con for my first time, like you saw me before I saw you. And I heard you yell my name. I was like, who's yelling my name? And I was like, holy shit, there you are.
Yep, yep.
So super awesome. So
Gen Con is
dudes,
a
I
pretty
mean,
magical place. It's true.
you chose cool heroes. Yeah, for sure. Let's talk about so we're gonna go on to the next subject. I'm gonna start the timer.
Hmm.
We're gonna talk about writing
right.
experiences real quick. And I want to start off a little bit because you are a professional writer and I am not a professional writer. But I have written and I like to write. I like to tell stories. And I've written I wrote something. I don't want to say it was professionally because it wasn't, but I wrote something for an audience, and I was told by a professor at a college that I should probably see about getting the short story like published. And I was like, well, I can't really do that because it's set in the realm of Eberron. So then I went and I rewrote it so it's not set, and I kind of just changed some of the names, so it's like the City of Skies instead of Sharn, or whatever. So I just kind of, and it was a spy story, and it was the main character is a Dark Lantern in the world of Eberron, and he works for the spies, and he was like working for his boss, and there was an airship and there was a murder that was going to take place, and he got sent there, and it turns out his boss was the one that was going to murder this person.
Oh,
and everybody's
nice.
like, this is a great story, you should do something with it. And personally, in my mind, I was like, there is no way. Like, I don't even know the first thing. I'm not a professional writer. I am not a whatever. But hearing so many of all of your stories, who have, self-published, started from scratch. Some people didn't even go to college for it. They're just like, I'm going to start writing, and they write, and now they've got 20 novels and 3 series and whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm always like, maybe I should have. Maybe I should have done something. Did you ever have that issue where you like, maybe I shouldn't write this, and then was there a point where it's like, I can either do this or I can't do this?
Okay. So the first thing I'm going to say is, it's not maybe I should have, it's maybe I should. You should still work on publishing that story. File the serial numbers off, which is to say, reshape it to be non-Eberron, and then, send it to some markets. See if you can get it published. You totally should. Like, people who enjoy things that's often a good sign that people are going to enjoy something that you wrote, right?
Yeah.
So, Yeah, give it a shot. And, you know, there are people who publish their first thing at age 50 or 60 or 70 who are still, you know, well known and respected and beloved writers decades later, too. So it's never too late, is what I'm saying. Was there a time when I was like, yeah, is this writing thing really going to work out? I don't know. Should I really do this? Yes, absolutely. There have been plenty of times all throughout my career where I'm like, do I really have it in me to do this? Am I really qualified to do this? Imposter syndrome affects everybody. I mean, you could talk to Ed Greenwood, you could talk to George R. R. Martin. They would tell you that imposter syndrome hits them from time to time. I mean, it's just part of being human, is being self-doubting. If you don't have self-doubts, well, you might need serious help, and consider reaching out to somebody in the support industry who can maybe help you with that. But generally speaking, like, just being uncertain is a fundamental part of creativity. Knowing whether, trying to determine whether you should be telling that story that you really want to, or trying to draw that drawing that you really see in your mind.
Yeah.
The answer is always yes. I mean, my standard advice to would-be writers who come up to me and say, hey, I want to become a writer, you know, I wrote this thing, what do I do? And I'd say, well, the first step is to quit. Try and stop. Just try and stop writing. And if you succeed, great, congratulations, you dodged a bullet there. But you know, if you don't succeed, well, welcome, because you're now one of us. Like, that's what it takes. Being a writer is a certain amount of obsession. It's just a drive to keep telling stories, to keep coming up with stuff, to keep putting stuff down on paper. And I don't want to make that sound intimidating.
Yeah.
You know, if you've only written one thing and you're like, oh, I don't know if I really want to be a writer. Well, I mean, you already are a writer. It's whether you are going to continue being a writer. It's whether you're going to continue to put things down. And the answer is probably yes, because writing is great. It's good for your creative abilities. It's good for your mental health. It's not always good for your pocketbook if you're relying on it to pay the bills, because there are only so many writers out there who are fantasy science fiction writers who do only that and can pay all the bills with it. Like, it's under 20 people who, you know, are able to do that. Stephen King is able to do that.
Yeah.
Neil Gaiman is able to do that. Most of us, well, we have a day job, or we have a wealthy spouse, or we are independently wealthy, because we're living under capitalism. And as long as we're living under capitalism, the things that you love are things that you need to work toward to be able to do. Some of us luck into it and have a situation where we're able to. Some of us get high-paying jobs that allow us some space to also create. People do writing in all kinds of situations and scenarios. If you want it, go for it. Work for it. I think you could make it. That's basically what I've got to say about it. And in case it was unclear when I was talking about capitalism there, I highly support a system of living where we can all do what we love and what we want to do, and create the things that we really need to create. Because God knows that if I was just paid to write, I would just write all the time.
Yeah.
I would write 10 to 12 novels a year if I had no day job and could just do this all the time.
Right.
Because I love it that much. Like, I got a lot of stories to tell about these characters. I'm doing a Kickstarter to raise money for a book.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, hopefully
it's
8
expensive.
books. Hopefully 8 books.
Hopefully
that's
8
where
books.
That's your highest current stretch goal, right? Is to possibly get eight books out there.
Okay, so
Uh-oh.
if I hit my highest stretch goal right now, that's book 6 of the main series, and then there's a prequel novel which is called The Girl Vengeance: The Downward Spiral, and it's about Lady Vengeance, and it takes place in 1995. And it's called The Downward Spiral because, well, she was a goth punk, and 9 Inch Nails is one of her favorite bands. All the chapters in that book are named after 90s songs. It's really fun.
That's hilarious.
So that's 7 books, but there is a Femmes Fatale sequel out there as well that Amanda and I are writing right now, and that would make 8 books. And then there's a third Femmes Fatale book, which is like far in the future. So that would be a 9th book. So all told, if you count the original Femmes Fatale and you count Eye for an Eye and you count We Are the Champions, we're looking at 12 books in this series, which is a lot.
Nice.
They aren't kind of short books. They're like 60 or 70,000. You can read them in a weekend, or if you get really into it, you can read it in an afternoon. Several people I've sent it to have been like
1 hour.
Several people I've sent it to have been like, I don't know if I have time to read this. And then they'll email me back in like 3 hours and they're like, oh my God, I finished it. What's next? And I'm like, well, next, I guess, is the Kickstarter so that I write the next one.
Right. So somebody said it's never too late, but get your ass in gear and do it, capital letters.
Yes, I definitely agree. That is the primary skill of a writer. And I think I've said this to Nick before. Before talent, before connections, before marketing ability is perseverance, determination, making yourself do it.
Yeah.
And you will get knocked down many, many times. You got to be able to get back up and keep doing it.
One says, the only writing I ever did was snippets for running TTRPGs. I don't think I could make myself write 100 pages worth of stuff. 50, 25, yeah, maybe. So he goes, okay, maybe you don't have to write a ton. There are amazing short story people.
Okay, I was going to say, now, you might be right. You know you, I don't know you beyond your screen name there, which is pretty cool. But the first long form fiction I ever wrote, I was 13 years old, 12 or 13 years old, and I wrote up a backstory for one of my D&D characters. It was supposed to be like 4 or 10 pages maybe, and it ended up being 40 pages. And I was like, and I still have more story to tell.
Yeah.
Because I only captured like the events over the course of a couple of years in this character's life. There's way more that I could write. And I was like, oh no, what have I done?
Yeah.
And then I started writing even more, and I wrote my first novel when I was 15. And it's easy to get addicted to it. So if you got some ideas, and if you're running games, you probably do have some ideas, give it a try. Even if you don't publish it. When I first started writing, the first like 5 or 6 novels that I wrote are unpublished. I didn't write them for publication. I wrote them for me because it was fun, because I liked telling stories, and I would show them to people, and then I would cringe while they were reading them. And well, they got better. Those first couple, don't worry, no one will ever read those. Thank God.
Again,
but like that's how you get better at this writing thing, is by writing, by practicing, by doing it. Learning, teaching yourself.
What was the first one that you did? Did you self-publish your first actual published book, or did somebody actually sign you?
My first published book was Ghostwalker. It came out in 2005, and that's published by Wizards of the Coast in their Forgotten Realm setting.
Yeah.
I have not published anything I wrote before Ghostwalker. I wrote a story in the Realms of the Dragons 2 anthology. I wrote that story after I had written Ghostwalker, but it came out before, because anthologies, the production scope and schedule is a little bit easier, I think.
Okay.
And that one came out in May 2005. I was 21 at the time that book came out. And then when Ghostwalker came out, I was 22. So I started publishing pretty early on, but that doesn't mean that, age is really a necessary thing, right?
Yeah.
Plenty of authors start at 40, at 50, at 60. Totally fine.
I might have asked you this on the podcast when we had you on, but how did you get that first deal? Because obviously to start off with a D&D novel or a D&D anthology, like, how did they even know about you?
Okay, so many, many years ago, 20 years ago, in fact. 2001, 2002, something like that. Wizards had recently bought TSR, and they were looking to revitalize their novel lines and brand them to, them, right?
Right.
Rather than TSR books. TSR books, there were so many TSR books, especially for the Forgotten Realms, but for other settings as well. And so Wizards was like, okay, so we're going to produce a series set in the realms. It's going to introduce some new authors that we're hiring. It's called the Sembia series. That's where we got Paul Kemp. That's where Richard Byers came from. That's where Lisa Smedman came from. Dave Gross wrote a book in that series. Okay. And they said, all right, we also want some totally new writers, people that have not published anything before. We don't know about them. We're going to create an open call for anybody to send in a submission for this novel called The Maiden of Pain. It's about a priest of Loviatar. They figured that if anybody can make a novel out of the concept of priest of Loviatar, goddess of suffering and bad BDSM, then that person must be a worthy writer. And the secondary goal of this open call was to find a number of other potential writers and just keep their contact information. Okay, reach out to them later and say, hey, we liked your thing. It wasn't quite good enough to be this particular novel, but we liked where you were going. How about you send us a pitch for another thing? And that's what happened to me. I submitted to the Maiden of Pain call. I didn't win. My book was more of a Warriors of Pain. There was a lot of fighting, lots of swords,
Okay.
not bad BDSM. And I didn't win. I was like, okay, that wasn't so bad. Like, it was good to submit to. I had submitted to Wizards before. I hadn't got through the door, but I had a very nice email letter, handwritten letter from the late great Peter Archer, writing to me saying, hey, this was really good. You should work on this, this, and this, and then submit to us again. And I'm like, well, that's nice.
Yeah.
An editor writing back to it's someone who has edited works that I love and acknowledge as pretty good formative pieces of fiction for me. So I was like, yeah, sure, absolutely. So when the Maiden of Pain call came up, I was like, yeah, I'm going to do this. We're going to do this. And then I lost, obviously. Cameron Franklin published that novel, which is, I mean, it's neat if you know Cameron in person, because he's a very religious fellow, and you can tell that he did his research on BDSM stuff, and he put in some toys and a couple of lines, but he kept it pretty clean. That's what we're saying.
Okay.
And then after that, I was part of the top 20, top 30 people that they reserve for a closed call. Now, a closed call is we want pitches from a smaller group of people, not anybody who wants to submit. There were thousands of people who submitted to the open call. To the closed call, they send it out to a specific group of people and say, hey, please pitch one of these novels, either a fighter's novel based on one of the prestige classes at the time. Prestige classes are what 3rd edition called subclasses or archetypes, or like how the fighter has champion and eldritch knight. That's what those were called in 3rd edition. And then there was a list of those. Or you could pitch a wizard's novel, which is based around the wizard's signature spell, and then there was a list of spells that they were interested in. And so I was reading the fighter options, and there were 2 that I was drawn to. One, which is Purple Dragon Knight, which are knights from the Kingdom of Cormyr. There's a great deal about nobility and about valor and, giving all for the realm. And Ghostwalker, which is a warrior on the edge between life and death, who embraces powers of the beyond to do what needs to be done. And I could not really decide between these 2 prestige classes. And finally I said, Like hell is my first novel going to be called Purple Dragon. Let's do this. So I wrote a Ghostwalker pitch, and I was not the only one who wrote a Ghostwalker pitch. Many people in the close call wrote a Ghostwalker pitch, including the guy who won the Wizards novel, James Davis. He wrote a Ghostwalker pitch, and they liked it a lot, but they also liked mine, and they're like, well, we really want both of these. Hey, James, your main villain is a blood magus, which is a type of wizard who can, travel through people's blood and manipulate their bodies using blood magic. How about you write your novel to focus on that character instead? And he's like, hell yeah. So that's how we got 2 Ghostwalker novels, Ghostwalker and Bloodwalk.
Nice. Okay. I didn't know that. I didn't know that part. I mean, I knew your part. I didn't know his part. So,
well, if you read Bloodwalk, the main good guy in that novel is a Ghostwalker.
Okay. I have not done that.
Very different from my Ghostwalker.
Yeah. But, well, now I'm gonna have to go back and my list gets bigger. My list continues to grow.
Which, I mean, you could read that scenario one of several ways, but I read it one of 2 ways. One, my submission was better. Ha ha, take that, James. Or 2, James is the better writer because he was able to adapt his to fit an entirely different aesthetic.
Yeah.
So either way, I like James a lot. I think his work is really good, and he is a very good horror writer. Horror and fantasy is kind of his thing, and I'm a little jealous of his abilities. So, good job, James.
You both won.
I was very pleased. I was very pleased to introduce Ghostwalkers to the realms with you.
Nice. Somebody says no.
I also like writing horror. I don't think I'm necessarily as good as James, but yeah. Anyway, it's fun. I read a lot of things.
One of the chatters says, I literally just wrote 3 separate chapters for my backstory because after the first I went, oh shit, I need to tell you about this and that.
That's how it happens.
Right?
That's how it goes.
And the other person says, so love me some horror. Yeah, F you, James.
Oh. No, James P. Davis is a great guy.
How many anthologies have you been a part of?
Wow, I lost count. I stopped keeping track. I think there are 2 Realms anthologies that I was a part of. 3. Realms of the Dragons 2, Realms of the Elves, and Realms of the Dead. That was my first foray into publishing a sort of horror related. Oh, look at that.
That's okay. Go ahead, continue.
There are a bunch of anthologies featuring these characters.
Okay.
The Justice Vengeance characters. Lady Vengeance's first appearance was in an anthology called Cobalt City Time Slip, where I was friends with Nate, and he was like, hey, I'm doing an anthology of Cobalt City stories. Would you like to write one? And I'm like, can I bring in my own character? He's like, yeah, go for it. So that's where she showed up, and she meets up and kind of teams up with an established Cobalt City character.
Okay.
And she also appeared in an anthology called Shadowed Souls, which is edited by Jim Butcher and Carrie L. Hughes, and features a Dresden story. So that is obviously Lady Vengeance's most read appearance is in that anthology. And that story is about her, I don't know, I guess her assistant or manager at her bar who runs everything because she's a medium functioning alcoholic who's not very good with money, pushing her to go to this boxing gym. And she goes to this boxing gym, and she encounters this young woman trainer who is having some trouble with a fella who's getting a little handsy, and she throws him on his butt and breaks his butt, and and they build this kind of interesting friendship and relationship. And that was just a kind of like a little bit day in the life sort of story, but also demons, and it's very cool. I very much enjoyed writing that.
Nice. I did not know that you were in one of the anthologies with Jim Butcher. That's kind of cool.
Oh yeah. I don't think Jim Butcher knows who I am.
Right.
That's okay. I know
Right.
who he is.
Yeah. And you
And
were in it, and you
Carrie's an
have a
old
story
friend,
featured
so
with his, so who cares?
exactly.
And you were part of the Awakened series, I believe, too, right?
That is indeed
The Awakened
accurate.
anthologies.
Yes,
So if you did another anthology, would you write these characters? If somebody was like, "Hey, you want to be in an anthology?"
totally.
Totally.
If it fit the theme,
Okay.
like I have so many ideas, Nick. Like, the ideas never stop. Like every time I'm like, oh man, that was a really great idea. I better write that one down so I don't forget that one. I don't have to worry about it because I'm going to think of something else. Whenever somebody pitches me an anthology, I tend to have an idea of what I'm going to write within 10 or 15 minutes.
Wow.
And sometimes it's about one of these established characters, and sometimes it's totally different. Like my stories in the Awakened anthologies that you brought up. One is about a thief and her ferret.
Which I
And
love, by the
she
way. I have the book
manifested the
back here
magical
somewhere.
ability to talk to her ferret, and her ferret is a sassy little thing, and they go on this heist to steal a money printing a press, right? Um, because well, you could steal a lot of money, or you could steal the press and make your own money,
Right.
which is a great idea for yeah. Anyway, and they go on this thing and they encounter something they did not expect. That is what happens in that story.
I got to
And
tell
then
you.
my
Oh, go
another
ahead.
Awakened story I wrote was about a young man who belongs to this clan of people out in the wilderness, and they have this coming of age ritual. Okay, I should back up a second. So the concept of the Awakened universe is that when the full moon rises, I think on your 19th year, you may manifest a magical power. This magical power might be like a minor magical thing that you can do, like you could produce flames, or you can like manipulate the wind, or it's a bond with with an awakened animal. That's why they awakened. And so my first two stories, one was that one about the lady with the ferret, and then another one was about this guy born into this community out in the wilderness, and they have this coming of age ritual where this magical thing is incorporated into it, and he thinks that nothing happens to him, and he's so disappointed, and it turns out that that's not entirely the case. And when he goes out hunting, he finds that he has bonded with an animal, and it's interesting how it develops. I really liked that story. It has this kind of like fairy tale element to it and feel. And then my third Awakened story, which was in the Awakened Modern anthology. This is if you had the moon thing, the moon magic,
Yeah.
but in the modern world. My story is about a character who manifests the ability to erase people's memories, and she does so accidentally for a long time before realizing that she's even doing it.
Oh.
And it basically like unravels her life, and she ends up joining this shadowy organization with the government to she becomes a spy essentially. And the concept of the story is that you're reading like her diary, and it starts off with, "This is not an admission of guilt," and then the story goes, and that was pretty fun. So
Awesome. I
yeah,
did post the link
just
for the
and
first Awakened book in the chat too. So
all those
after people get in on the Kickstarter, then they can go get the Awakened book.
exactly, all those stories are so different because just that very small concept of the moon rises on your 19th year, and you may manifest a magical ability or a connection with a familiar, basically. And there's so many things you can do with that. Spinning off ideas from a basic concept or a theme can be really fulfilling and produce just great stories. And those anthologies are packed full of great stories, like highly recommended.
Yeah, yeah, definitely, and by a bunch of amazing authors too. So, uh,
Definitely.
before we get to the chat, real quick, I wanted to mention. So you're the thief with a ferret. There's in my personal life, there's a game that's going to be happening that we're going to be playing. That's a piratey sailing vessel type game. And I was like, I'm gonna play like a dwarf that's got like one level of wizard, and then the rest is gonna be rogue. But I'm gonna have a rat, and it's gonna have the same kind of attitude as that ferret. And that's gonna be the familiar, but I'm the thief. And so yeah, same kind of thing. There's one level of wizard just to get that familiar that's a rat, and then the rat is, because it's a build rat, we're pirates. But yeah,
Right.
He's like a cat burglar type character, but he's a dwarf, and his pet is a rat. But the rat is very, we'll say, snarky. Is
Yep. Snarky
so,
and sassy animal companions, man. That's the way to go.
Let's see. What did medium functional alcoholic, bad with money, sounds like my best bud since I was a kid. Cult based on a nutrition management system paved the way for implanting functional chlorophyll in people via a modded staph infection cult. It goes deep.
Yeah, I saw that and I was like, oh man. Yeah, no, there's something there. You could develop an interesting story out of that.
Those
kind of like a
secret cult
Cthulhu
government
Last
stuff
of
is
Us
always
thing.
good, right?
Just saying.
Yeah, make a whole video game system out of it.
Totally.
So for those that are here, our next subject is going to be, put in parentheses, potluck. And it's literally the stuff that we really kind of covered or maybe touched on, we'll go back on, or maybe we'll just go out completely off the rails. Eric came up with this topic, and I'm going to keep it, and I think I'm just going to put it in every episode from here on out. The third or fourth one will always just be the potluck. It's Eric had that, and I'm like, that's a great idea. I love it.
Awesome.
So we're going to do that. We're going to take a quick break to use restroom or get refills on our drinks or anything like that. Are you drinking anything, Eric?
Not at the moment, but I will now, because it's after
moment.
5 where I am.
My father-in-law he went to Belize and got me some rum that I can't get in the U.S., and he brought some back. He's like, here you go, I got you a gift. I was like, yes.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome.
So everybody who is here, please stick around. While you're sticking around and hanging out and waiting for us to come back, go ahead and check out the Kickstarter. Let me get the link back up for you right here. We're just going to go, boom, there's the link. Go and check out, while you're waiting for us to come back, go and check out the Kickstarter. Back it if you can. You got, what, a week left? Less than a week?
It ends Sunday morning.
Yeah, so less than a week.
This is
get in
the
on it.
last week. Reward tiers, pretty inexpensive. You could just pick yourself up an ebook copy of the book, $5.
Awesome. All right, guys, we will be right back. We're going to take a quick break. When we get back, we're going to get into potluck, and we'll get into the details on the Kickstarter. Well, this question asks, how do you feel about shows like Stranger Things changing the lore for D&D? Do you view this as a good thing to get people involved in the lore, or a bad thing for the original lore overall? I think that's a great question.
It's a wonderful thing. D&D's lore is meant to be individualized by whoever's sitting around the gaming table, right? Yeah, I mean, I play D&D in my Demon Wars world. I'm not using Forgotten Realms lore, or sometimes I am. Yeah. Or sometimes I'm mixing the two, or I'm changing it. I think it's awesome that you can be a D&D player or a Magic player or a whatever game player now and not feel like you have to hide somewhere and don't tell anyone you're playing it.
Yeah.
And, shows like Freaks and Geeks, I think, was one of the ones that really brought it forward.
Called Crocodile Tears. And the first two follow one character and then a spin-off character who was going me. I run that's the novella, Crocodile Tears. But yeah, a lot of fun. One of the main characters, the one who is the primary character in the novella, is his name is Ting. And if you've spent any time in the Caribbean, you know the accent they
Oh yeah.
So Ting, what's that about? It's because my mother always said I was the prettiest little Ting. And the thing is, he's a Rastafarian troll shaman. So he's 10 feet tall, 5 feet wide, belly out to here, dreads down to here, and his name is Ting because he's a pretty little Ting. You know, so it's a joke within a joke.
I think for Eberron, you know, one of the things that we were aiming for was the experience would be a little different. The Eberron had a strong sense of like, we're going to echo pulp novels. And so Eberron was actually, we started I remember pitching, we're going to do like, pick a character, and these are episodic character stories, and the authors can have a bigger arc, but we're really pushing for, this is the adventure of Abraxas Wren versus this is a trilogy about Abraxas Wren. And so Forgotten Realms for a long time was much more trilogy focused, and that might be trilogy about the same characters, but you really had one strong narrative arc over that. Obviously, if you read Brimstone Angels, I did the Eberron thing. But I think that was because they liked how that was working and they wanted to do that more.
In case that's not obvious, if your dragon is stymied and runs out of health, he stomps all over the board trying to crush everything and burn it to the ground, just in one epic meltdown. And if you win that way, that's awesome too. It was a really great project in terms of working with the team too, because it was incredibly difficult not to quote back to the brothers chaps their own lines.
I can imagine that's a hard part for them too, because having people run up, recognizing them, and just run up to them and go, "Burninating the countryside." And hello, we are back from break, everybody. We are here with amazing author and game designer Erik Scott de Bie, who has his new Kickstarter out now. He's got less than a week left, which you can find in our chat link right there. Nightbot has it. You might have to copy and paste. I redid my Nightbot, so when he posts the link, it will actually like all be in there properly. Some people will see it, but if you're on a mobile, it doesn't do the link appropriately. So there, I just did the link all by itself, so you guys can click on it and go and get in on the Kickstarter and get the stuff. Now I'm going to refresh. Did any of you sign up? Did you guys sign up? You did. Somebody did. Somebody went in there.
Hey, awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
55 to 56. I'm just going to say that it was somebody from chat.
It definitely was.
Even if it wasn't, I'm saying it was.
One of you heroes in the chat. I appreciate it.
That's right.
So we were talking about drinks earlier, and I wanted to show off my little whiskey keg here.
Oh, yeah.
That
what do you have in there?
A friend of mine got this. It's just like Black Eagle bourbon.
Okay.
It's nothing too much worth writing home about, but it's
done. It's ready.
Just right there.
Oh no! Don't break it.
Didn't break it. Okay, there we go. Yeah. See, just get some bourbon.
We got 2 casks for. Was it our wedding? It might have been our wedding. As a
My
gift.
hands are really big, so I'm just going to include this this glass for scale.
Yeah, yeah. So it's like,
this is how big we're talking.
Yeah, they're not tiny. What do you mean? I thought that was a full size 55-gallon barrel. That's a full size.
You could get yourself trashed on this amount of bourbon, is what I'm saying.
You're just a stone giant with non-gray makeup on.
Well, you have seen me in real life.
I have. It was funny. You're like, "Hey, Nick," and I turned around, but I turned around at my height, and I just see your chest. It's like, "Oh, hi."
That's
right. And for those watching, I am not a short person either. I'm 6'1". I guess nowadays that's about average. But I'm still, I don't feel like I am a short person, and so there are very few people that I often have to look up to. And when I say look up to, I mean that in more senses than just the fact that you're tall. You're an amazing, awesome author. Love your work, and if I didn't, I wouldn't have had you on pretty much every single show I try and put out. So.
I appreciate that, Nick. I mean, and it's just fun hanging out with you. So, absolutely. I am 6'7" for anyone who's curious. There are people taller than me in the industry. B. Dave Walters, for instance, is 1 inch taller than me, and Man, that guy's strong. Anyway,
I think you're about the same. I think Justin Leslie is about that same height. He's an urban fantasy author. He's really tall as well.
Joe Manganiello is also very tall. I think I am a little bit taller than he is, but I'm not sure. The point is, tall guys are good. I don't know. Ask me a question. Let's go. There was no point. I was just vamping.
I can hear my wife downstairs laughing at our banter right now. Just saying. So we're doing our next subject is a potluck, kind of all these different things that we've kind of talked about. Maybe we like glazed over a subject a little bit or something a little bit. And after we're done with the potluck, we'll get into really the nooks and crannies of the Kickstarter itself. But I'm going to start the timer, but we were talking about alcohol a little bit, and I'm going to count that as part of potluck. We got some of those same barrels. We got 2 of them, and not that same exact one. Yours is a lot nicer than ours was, but we ended up putting rum in ours, and I recently I'm in a couple rum groups on Facebook, and one of the rum group people was like, "Well, you've got a barrel now. Now you don't have to worry about the crappy." Store-bought spiced rum. You can spice your own rum. That's what those barrels.
Exactly.
And I was like,
exactly. That's what I was going to say. The instructions for this say, put your own spices and herbs and stuff in here. And I'm like, oh,
yeah,
what a neat idea. Yeah.
Somebody said tequila and coffee is better than whiskey or other liquors. Hot take. Oh no. I mean, I'm a fan of tequila.
Oh man.
I'm a fan of tequila, but that's a hard one. But I also personally like rum more than whiskey or bourbon. Although I just found Woodford bourbon, and I got that, and I was like, oh my god, this is going to be my gateway whiskey. This is going to be what does it, where I'm going to get addicted. Is this particular one?
Woodford Reserve is my uncle's favorite bourbon. And somebody told me about this before our most recent family gathering, and I just went out and bought a bottle for him specifically. Like, it was for everybody, but like I knew he was coming, and he was like, and he drank like half the bottle in one evening, and I'm like, okay, it is definitely his thing.
What did you think of it?
Oh no, it's pretty good. Yeah. It's not my favorite, but I like it a lot.
For the price point, I think that's a pretty damn good.
Yeah, it's very solid.
Yeah.
I think my favorite bourbon might be Eagle Rare.
Okay.
Which I believe is from the same people who do Buffalo Trace.
Oh, okay.
It's just a slightly higher shelf. I also like Angel's Envy a lot. That's my wife's favorite bourbon. It has a very distinctive kind of a warm taste to it. And I have this Old Forester on my shelf right now, which is fairly expensive bourbon and is also pretty good. Yeah, but I've had a lot. So
every time I go someplace that has like cocktails and it's like known for it being a cocktail bar or a thing, I always look at their list and I'm like, okay, they've got 4 different drinks and all of them use a different rum or a different whiskey. It's like, okay, this is kind of exciting, so I always want to try it. And every once in a while I'll see one that says Old Forester. I was like, I should try that. I should really try that. And then I go with a rum drink instead.
Yeah. One of these days. One of these days. It's worth trying. The one that I have is the, I think, 1920 Prohibition style.
Okay.
Which, let's be clear, when it says Prohibition style, I think immediately of fake alcohol that's been given, colored dyes to make it look like real alcohol, and it's going to drive you blind because that's what happened during Prohibition. People selling crap that they packaged as legitimate alcohol
because they couldn't get anything else. Yeah,
but that's not what modern marketing means. What modern marketing means is that it's really strong. You'll like it.
Yeah.
So
for sure. Do you have any characters that you wrote that were like big alcohol connoisseurs? Or that was featured?
Lady Vengeance is, like I said, a medium functioning alcoholic. When I first started writing her, she was a Scotch lady. Scotch was her thing. And then
was Scotch your thing when you first started writing it?
Yes.
I nailed it.
And then when I one year after Gen Con, in fact, my wife came to Indianapolis. She was actually in Indianapolis for about 20 minutes one time. And we drove down to Kentucky and just tasted a bunch of bourbons and went on vacation down there. And it was eye-opening, life-changing. I became a bourbon person overnight. And so too did she become a bourbon person.
That's
I mean,
hilarious.
she'll drink anything. She's an alcoholic, like I said. And I don't mean to like glorify alcoholism. Her alcoholism is largely a flaw. She drinks because it blocks her empathic sense. I mean, we've all read stories about telepaths going around and like, you know, being unable to deal with hearing people's thoughts all the time.
Right.
Well, what if you went around and you felt other people's feelings all the time?
Right.
Not always in context. And places also can soak up feelings.
Yeah.
The older the place, the more people who have lived in a place, the more feelings are in it. It's like ghosts of emotions. And she lives in Seattle, which is a very old city full of old haunted buildings. And her powers have largely brought her nothing but trauma and suffering throughout her life. So alcohol, it blocks out the powers and the voices, particularly of the demon lord trying to possess her again. So one of her nemeses is actively trying to hunt her down and kill her because he is concerned that the demon lord will possess her and become a threat to the world.
Yeah.
And he's totally right. Like that could happen and almost has happened a couple times. So
yeah, and we don't want to look, you know, we don't want to, I especially, and I know Eric is probably going to agree, don't want to look light on people that have any kind of drinking issues. If you think you have a problem, seek help.
Absolutely.
Seek
Absolutely.
help. There are so many places out there that can help you out and need it. I actually, for a while there, I don't know, maybe 8-9 years ago, I was drinking like I do now, but I was like, do I have a problem? Do I have an issue? And the second you start asking yourself that, then you got to realize you might have a problem. So the first thing I did is I was just like, I'm done. So I quit. I was like, right there, then and there, it's like, I think I went 5.5, 6 years. I didn't have a drink. And after about 5 years, it's like, okay, I'm fairly certain I didn't have a problem. Now I know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's good. But yeah, if you do like my dad, he was my stepdad, but to me, he was my dad. He had a major drinking problem, majorly affected me my whole life. In the end, that's one of the things that, you know, caused my mom to pass away was drinking issues. So I definitely do not look light on drinking issues. If you have a problem, if you think you have a problem, if you have a small inkling that you drink too much, get professional help and find out. They can help you. So do it. Take care of yourself.
Yes,
for sure.
I want to reiterate that too. I engage with some dark subject material in my work.
Mm-hmm.
That has always been the case since the very beginning of my writing. And it has become more refined as time passes. When I write stuff that's in a modern world, similar to our own world, I grapple with modern issues. Alcoholism is a major issue for Lady Vengeance. Racism is a major issue for Orestes. Fame, celebrity is a major issue for A Girl, and isolation and loneliness and the way that our flaws and foibles might seem innocuous at first, but they will build up over time and really compromise our lives. Which is not to say that racism is a foible. Orestes is not suffering from his own racism. He's suffering from racism that is directed against him, obviously. He is a proud Black man who was raised around mostly white people, and that has its own sense of isolation and separation. And me, I am a white man myself. I don't have that experience. I wasn't raised that way. The best I can do is research and listen and watch other stories and read books by, you know, Black authors and philosophers and writers and analysts. And so I approach these things as cautiously as I can and as respectfully as I can, because I think they're important. not because I feel the need to tell a coming of age story about a young black man raised by white people. No. I'm not going to do that. That's not my story. Even if I wanted to, I couldn't tell a story like that. But I could tell stories that have to do with alcohol and being concerned that you're drinking too much. Looking at what happens when one develops a reliance upon alcohol, talking about addiction, talking about obsession, talking about anxiety issues. Orestes suffers from significant anxiety issues, partly because of his upbringing, partly because of the way his powers function. And that has affected his life in many ways. I myself have an anxiety disorder. I'm on medication, which is a good thing. Not a failure, not a weakness. I told myself for many, many years, don't get medication. If you do that, you are failing. You have made a mistake. You are weak. No, that's not the case. Medication doesn't solve anxiety. It doesn't make you not anxious ever. It kind of balances you. It puts like a ceiling, like a max of how much how anxious you're going to get.
Yeah.
Because there have been scenarios that came up before I was on meds, and scenarios similar to that have come up after I've been on meds, and I react to them totally differently. I'm much more able to control myself. I'm much less likely to be paralyzed by indecision and anxiety and fear. And that's something that Orestes struggles with. So that is the part of his story that most connects with me as a person. And the fear of loneliness and isolation that comes with accomplishment and being in the public eye. And that's all the stuff that A-Girl is dealing with. I mentioned that superheroes in my setting were kind of like celebrities. Well, A-Girl is an influencer superhero. Like, she's super popular on social media. She has launched a musical career, which has culminated in one hit song. The rest of her album, nobody plays because it was produced by somebody else, and it's not as good. And she has, 50,000 followers on all of her social media accounts. But she's trying to break into acting. She's trying to have a creative outlet that isn't just like, I'm talking about what I had to eat today, or I'm talking about how racism is bad and things like that. Fallen Angel, book number 3, she does land a role as in a biopic about the superhero team that Lady Vengeance used to be part of. And A-Girl is cast as her own mother on that team.
Wow.
Which is interesting because her powers are a little similar, so she can kind of fake it. And she has some kind of chemistry with the dude who is her father in real life. Like, he's cast to play her father in the movie.
Okay, I was like, wait,
right?
what?
No. Like, no, she hates her dad. Like, he was not part of raising her, and she doesn't know him. Okay. She was adopted, basically. And but like, her character is supposed to have some chemistry with this guy, and she kind of does. She thinks he's really hot, and they get along. But like, on screen, when he's being her father, she can't do it, right? She gets all freaked out and just can't do it. The woman that cast to play Lady Vengeance hates her guts, which is appropriate because Lady Vengeance hated A-Girl's mother so much. And it's just this great little meta commentary on how celebrity and production of art, specifically movies, plays out in our modern world. And I'm really looking forward to it. That's going to be a great novel.
Nice. That's really cool. What's it like? And you can give as much as we want, but what's it like? Do you get obsessed when you're putting together books like this, or reading stuff like this, or you like building a world? Do you get like so in the zone that your wife and your family and everyone's like, I can't even have a conversation without this coming up? Is that because I find that I'll be having dinner and I can't shut up about live streaming or whatever I have coming up, or an upcoming guest or something that's happening. I personally am just like, I can't. Then my wife's just like, just get it out of your system. Okay, now we can talk about other things. Is that happen for you, or?
It is better than it used to be. Let's just put it that way. Like when I started writing and I started publishing, like that's all I wanted to talk about. And you know, my wife, long suffering. If you're married, this is the thing that Bob Salvatore says, that if you're married to a writer, you're just going to suffer a little bit. like they are the biggest dorks in the world. They're nerding out over their own stuff. They're nerding out over the things that they're really interested in, and the things that they're interested in are not necessarily what you're interested in.
Right.
You know, like there are very few bigger nerds than book nerds, and especially fantasy and science fiction book nerds. I mean, so early in my relationship with my girlfriend, now wife, I would talk to her about what I was working on all the time. She used to read my stuff. She used to edit some of my stuff. She doesn't edit it anymore, which is probably for the best, because it would just produce too many conflicts between us.
Right.
Like, because I would take what she says personally, and I kind of take all editing personally. Okay, sidebar. If you're a writer and people send you edits and thoughts about your work, you're going to take it personally. It's just going to happen. Don't think that you're weird because you're unable to separate your professional stuff from edits. If you take it personally, that just means that you're invested in it, because what you put on the page is you. That's your creative stuff.
Right.
That's your vision, and someone's critiquing it. How dare they? So give yourself some space to have that feeling. Let it pass. And then fix it the way they suggest it, because they are almost always right. That's what I'm going to say.
Do you have a conversation with the editors? Be like, okay, this is kind of what I was thinking in this to defend this situation, or are you just like across the board like, no, I'm going to do what they do?
It depends. Some things are worth pushing back on. Some things are not. And just go with it. It depends on your relationship with your editor. If you know them, you've worked together a lot. Like I have editors who have edited half a dozen books for me by this point. Gabrielle Harvaway, for instance, is an old friend. She knows me very well. She knows my work very well. She edited all my World of Ruin books. And like I can trust her. You know, she says, I changed some things in your book. I'm like, I trust your judgment. It's fine. I don't even need to look at it. Right?
Yeah.
That's a relationship, a connection that you build with an editor over time. It's not necessarily going to happen immediately. There's going to be some friction. There's going to be a little bit of pushback. The key is approach it with an open mind, respectfully, because your editor is probably right.
Right.
That's the thing. You are very close to the things that you create. And it is hard to see flaws in things that you create because they're you.
Yeah.
And we are not psychologically set up to self doubt and question ourselves. Sure, you might think, can I really accomplish this? But once you write something down, you're like, yeah, this is perfect. I'm good. I did this right. Editors are there for a reason. Trust your editor.
Yeah.
That's And so, getting back to my previous
topic. Before you go on, I was just looking real quick. So Gabrielle. I'm in talks with her when she's got the time. She's going to be on the podcast to talk about something else that you may or may not be working on, and that Chris Jackson may or may not also be working on later down the road. She's a little
Chris
bit busy.
And I are working on those things.
She's a little busy at the moment, but as soon as she gets the time, she's going to be joining the podcast, and we're going to be talking about those things. So.
Excellent.
So yeah, very excited for that. I met her at Gen Con with you. You introduced me to her, and I was like, gotta have her on the show to talk about these things. But I wanted to give it a little bit of time till it was a little bit closer to that moment to talk about it. So
I wrote I may or may not have written a whole novel set in that thing that we're not talking about.
And I don't know how much you guys can talk about it. So.
That'll be a good conversation.
Chris talked a little bit about it when he was on here. I did a special event that turned into a podcast episode, but it was a special Twitch stream that we did, and he came on and we chatted about it. So People can go and listen to that podcast anytime they want, anywhere you get podcasts.
Excellent. Yes, Gabrielle is great. I think that will be an excellent show.
Yeah.
Highly recommend it.
Very excited.
What I was finally going to say,
go.
very roundabout way of getting there, is that the wife and I have developed a code.
Okay.
When I feel the need to talk about something writing related, gaming industry related, something like that, I say, so are you ready to hear about something geeky? And then that gives her the agency to say yes, or let's wait for a bit, right? Because I will tell her eventually, but it doesn't all have to come flowing out of me. So, and we've been together for 20 years now. So this is just a dynamic that we've worked out between each other. So yes, assuming that you do not drive your significant other / family away within the first 5 or 6 years, you probably find some balance.
Nice. So I'm doing good, is what you're telling me. I'm doing good so far.
You are doing good. Keep it up. Respect her space.
Yeah, usually it's like this, and then afterwards it'll be like, oh yeah, so how was your day at work for the last 4 days?
You are also doing good, next wife. Good job. Keep your boundaries. Maintain them.
Yeah. I appreciate that.
You're welcome, buddy.
Tequila and cop. Oh, we already talked about that. Lafayette Alpine Distillery, sipping whiskey.
Yes, I was really curious about that. I need to look that up. That sounds cool.
Yeah. But I wonder what their water is like, how their water, if it's actually like made in the Alpines, like what their water, because the type of water you use directly affects the flavor of certain alcohols. So I'm always quite curious about something like Alpine, the water from the Alpines. Meds is good. You agreed.
I'm looking that up right now.
All right.
Alpine Distilling. Oh man, that does look good. Spiced bourbon whiskey. Okay, so
did Gabrielle worked on the Helma stuff?
Yes.
Okay.
She wrote one of the Helma books, actually. It was oh man, what was the original name of that book? Ink Calls to Ink, I think.
Okay.
And it was about this demon who inscribes magic into tattoos, and it has since been re-released as Ether's Pawn.
Okay.
Definitely worth checking out. Gabrielle is working on a sequel to it right now, and it draws on some of her experience visiting some regions of the frozen north, and it will be very interesting and cool, and there are some great characters in that book. So
I
highly recommend Gabrielle's work. She writes some cool stuff. She wrote this book called Hearts Are Jerks, which is about this young high school girl who was raised by polyamorous parents.
Okay.
And so she just thinks that polyamory is just naturally like the way relationships work. And so when she gets to high school, she starts dating multiple people, and it raises some scandals. And otherwise it's just like day in the life sort of story. And it's really good. Highly recommended.
Nice.
Gabrielle is a delightful writer and a very good editor.
What is the name of that miniature company? I can't think of it off the top of my head. That's what I'm looking for.
Are you talking about Archvillain Games?
Yes, that's what I'm talking about. Archvillain.
Yes, Gabrielle is the managing editor. Managing editor? I'm not sure what her official title is of Archvillain Games.
There we go. So that's what it is, everyone. You guys can go and look up Archvillain Games if you want to see more about that, or her stuff is, I think, just Gabrielle.
Oh man,
Harbaway.
Check out those minis that Archvillain Games makes.
Right?
Okay, so their business model is real cool because they have really embraced the aesthetic of the 3D printers that people are having. They're, particularly during COVID and just kind of naturally the advance of tech, people have started owning and using 3D printers to print their own stuff. And what Archvillain does is it designs these really cool and very intricate and very evocative miniatures. And they don't sell the miniatures exactly. They sell the instructions for printing them on your 3D printer.
Yeah, the code or the design or whatever.
So like it can go anywhere in the world, wherever you are with your printer.
Yeah.
They'll just email it to you, and you can join their Patreon and get I think it's an adventure every month and some miniature instructions. Yeah, just click on that link that he shared in the chat, because there's some really great stuff there.
It is really awesome. Archvillaingames.com. If this ends up in a podcast form or on YouTube somewhere down the road, then there you'll have the actual how it is typed up.
Okay, so you said this thing about the spiced bourbon, and I'm really curious because bourbon, not everybody knows this, has a certain set of rules which are legally mandated by an act
to be
of
called
the United
bourbon?
States legislature, that you have to meet these criteria in order to be called bourbon.
Right.
And one of those, let me see. I looked these up.
And I wish they'd do that with rum. I really do.
Okay. So, one, bourbon has to have a mash bill of at least 51% corn. So it has to be majority corn in order to be bourbon.
Okay.
Often bourbon will then have rye, wheat, or malted barley, right? Bourbon has to be aged in new charred oak barrels. Okay, so a new barrel made of oak, charred for at least 2 years to be called bourbon. Bourbon must be distilled no higher than 160 proof, which is 80% alcohol by volume. Some whiskey allows up to 90%, but bourbon does not. You cannot be bourbon if you are over 160 proof during the distilling. Bourbon has to be barreled at no more than 125 proof. So part of the distilling process is that you will produce a much, much higher concentration of alcohol than what you're actually going to sell.
Yeah.
And so when it goes into the barrel, it has to be 125 proof or lower. But bourbon has to be bottled at no less than 80 proof or a minimum of 40% alcohol by volume. So it has to be at least 80 when it goes in the bottle, and it has to be barreled at no more than 125. It is possible that you could theoretically get bourbon higher than 125 if the alcohol increases during the barreling process. That is legally possible. It might be physically difficult.
Yeah, it might be
in terms of
chemically
physics.
hard.
Chemically very difficult. So most bourbon will be between 80 and about 120 in terms of proof.
Okay.
When bourbon is aging, because it has to age in those barrels for 2 years, it will evaporate, and it will also soak into the barrel. The bourbon that evaporates is called the angel's share.
Okay.
It's like it's taken up into heaven. The angels are getting drunk on it. Everybody's enjoying it. Okay. That's where you get the bourbon Angel's Envy.
Okay.
Which that's the bourbon the angels couldn't get, right?
Yeah.
And then the bourbon that soaks into the barrel is called the Devil's Cut. That's the part that the devil takes.
Right.
And
which
so
sounds like a great premises of a book.
I'm definitely going to write a story that is called Devil's Cut, and it's going to be about this.
Have it be where like one of the little devils shows up to pick it up, like, and something goes drastically awry. Sorry. I'm just...
So Jim Beam, which is one of the biggest bourbon manufacturers in the United States, currently owned by the same people who own Centauri, by the way.
Okay.
Fun fact, has a bourbon called Devil's Cut. And the way that bourbon is made is that they take a barrel that they made bourbon in, and they put more bourbon in and slosh it around to get out some of that bourbon that's soaked into the barrel.
Okay. Interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Nice.
So it's maybe a little stronger than your regular Jim Beam bourbon. I don't know. Anyway, fun fact.
Yeah, I wish
bourbon is generally considered to be pure. You're not allowed to flavor bourbon and have it still be bourbon. Once you add flavors to it, it becomes flavored whiskey.
Yep.
So like the maple flavored whiskey, the peanut butter flavored whiskey, Fireball whiskey. Those are not bourbons, those are whiskeys. They might be made in almost identically the same way, but they are not considered to be bourbon.
Yeah. I wish they had that for rums. I always tell people, I go, yeah, but that's a spiced rum. That's not a real rum. And they're like, well, what's the difference? I'm like, have you ever had, and that's my example. Have you ever had Fireball? They're like, yeah. I'm like, that's a spiced whiskey.
Exactly.
It's a spiced whiskey, just like Captain Morgan is a spiced rum. And I'm like,
okay.
Oh.
So here's my theory about that. So bourbon is very much an American thing. We white people got a hold of it and said, this is our thing. Rum, on the other hand, hails from the Caribbean.
Yeah.
Much more racially diverse area. And we Americans, you know, some of us, not all of us, not all white guys, but definitely a lot of them are just not so keen on things that are created by non-white people. Yeah. So bourbon, that's our thing. Yeah. Rum, you know, that's other people's thing.
But it is making it. There is a lot of stuff going on. I think they just passed a bill. Barbados itself, Barbados said, if anything is produced here, it needs the Barbados stamp of approval, and this is the requirements. And so now I'm like, yes,
this is good.
Although almost all of the rums that come out of Barbados are like that, except for there's Foursquare makes a spiced rum, and they're very specific about like, this is a spiced rum, but they still try and follow all of the stuff. That's because Foursquare is my favorite rum of all time, and
this is promising.
And they make a spiced, their own spiced rum, which is it's cheaper than Captain Morgan, but it's way better. It's got a little bit more like vanilla and like cardamom type flavors in it. But
I'm just gonna put that in my notes.
Yeah, if you get a Foursquare, look for a Foursquare masterclass. They usually run anywhere from $50 to $100, but it is well worth it if you want to try a good rum.
I love coming on your show because like I get cool things to take away. Yeah, I'm gonna have to look into that. I don't drink as much rum these days as I used to. I have Crohn's disease, which is it's a gut thing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's an autoimmune disorder, and rum is particularly hard on my system. But periodically we'll check it out. So, I mean, all alcohol is hard on my system, but rum is particularly hard. It's because it's sugar based. Yeah. Sugar takes a while to it digests differently from other types. But that doesn't mean I don't like it. I do a lot. Yes. Autoimmune diseases, man. Right?
Anyway. Well, that was a thing for me for a longest time, like bourbon and whiskey. Me being a celiac, I always had to be super careful, about which ones. And that's the same with the rum. Like I don't usually do I can't have Kraken because they add stuff after the fact, and so I can't have like Kraken and rum or Kraken. Chris Jackson calls it Kraken. And
I don't know why Chris calls it Kraken. It's definitely Kraken.
I don't know either, but I mean, he's the piratey sailor, so I mean, maybe I should just give him the leeway on that.
It's true, but I want to make a point. Seattle has just got a National Hockey League
sports team, yeah,
called the Kraken, and they make a big show and lots of pageantry at their games of being the Kraken, sponsored by Kraken Rum. So it's Kraken, Chris. Come at
Chris,
me, bro.
Chris, I'm not going to correct you, but Eric will. Eric will correct you.
I will do it.
I love it. We had a long discussion about rums the other day. Last time he was on here, we just on the side we were just like talking about rums, and I was writing down notes, and he was writing down notes, and we were like, oh, I got to try this, and he's like, you should try that, and yeah, for sure. Are you a gin person at all? Do you like gin?
Okay, so when I was younger, I never really liked gin, but that was because I drank like low shelf, just your basic gin, Gordon's, that kind of thing. But the higher shelf stuff, I rather like. And it's mostly in martinis and stuff that I drink gin. There's a distillery called Scratch up here in the Pacific Northwest.
Okay.
They are near one of the ferries.
All
I
right.
don't remember exactly. And they make just fantastic gin. I have a bottle of martini style gin, which makes the best martinis. Oof. And yeah, I could drink all their product, but it's a bit spendy. So yeah, well worth it. Yeah, I have recently developed a taste for gin, is what we're saying.
We had I mentioned to you this on the side. We had Kevin Hearn on the show, and he's a big spirits sort of person. And when we had him on, I asked him about it. And he's like, you can't get it in the U.S., but if you ever get to Canada, there's a gin called Empress Gin. It's really good, and it changes color with with stuff because he explained it all. And I looked at it, and of course I couldn't get it in the U.S. or whatever. And I was sitting there going through, and I was re-listening to all of the previous podcasts I had done, just listening for audio clarity and how the show has changed, and just personally trying to get a mindset like, what do I need to change, stuff like that. And sometimes I get into the show and I'm like, I forget that what my purpose is because I'm like really enjoying it. And I was doing that, and I was like, oh yeah, I should look at that again. And so it was in my mind, and that day I was in a liquor store and I found it, and I was like, I thought they didn't have it. I looked it up before. They had recently released it. They allowed the FDA to bring it through because of the one ingredient they were questionable on. And so I got it, and I'm like, I got it, and I tried it. I was like, dear God, this is my new favorite gin.
Awesome.
And it's called Empress Gin for those.
Yeah, I'm gonna put that in my notes as well.
Yeah. So nice. And I tried it. And it's like I'll put in whatever the it's usually citrus that'll change the color. It'll change from purple to pink. And it's not just a watered down thing, because then I tried doing it without that, and it just was like a different shade of purple. So it literally does change colors.
I am on the hunt for a gin that the wife will like. Okay. So
I also like Aviation. Hendrix has a lavender flavored gin okay. I know a few people. I hate to stereotype because it's not a thing. And I say this because like my wife will go in and order an old fashioned, and I'll be like, oh, I'll get the fruity rum drink. But I know a lot of girls really like the Hendrix lavender gin when it comes to their drinks. So whether it's
she's like the Aviation well enough.
I like the Aviation as well.
And I should try that lavender Hendrix at some
point.
The
regular, if she likes Aviation, the regular Hendrix is pretty good too.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right. Somebody said they totally thought we were talking about gyms and go work out. My roommate loves gin. I'll ask her for recommendations and send them your way. Awesome.
Excellent. Yeah. She Kels has my email and my Facebook and my Twitter and a contract with me for me to buy her art. So yeah, she can contact me.
Well, whatever she sends you, forward it on to me. Let me know.
Will do.
Welcome in Scarblade. Welcome in everybody else who's come in since we started. We've gone through 3 subjects. We first started talking about role-playing as superheroes. We then moved on to our writing experiences, and which kind of turned into apparently it was a pep talk of Erik pep talking me that I should write more.
I'm a pusher, man.
And then we talked kind of a potluck, which actually kind of turned out more or less to be talking about alcohol and some of the alcohol, the way, the influences of it, and our favorite stuff. It's not really exactly what I think either of us thought we were going to talk about during that potluck section. But,
oh no, definitely not.
But I'm not going to do it. But let's talk a little bit more in depth, and I'm not going to put the timer on actually I'm going to put the timer on just so we have an idea of how long it's been, but we can keep talking forever about it until we're sick. So I'm still going to start it just because but let's talk about the Kickstarter. First question I have is, when you're putting together a Kickstarter for this or any other Kickstarter, how do you choose, like, what factors do you take into your mind when you come up with your goal? Like, this is my main goal, this is what I need to publish or whatever.
Okay, so I cheated a little bit.
Okay.
Because I am using a small press publisher called DEFCON 1 Publishing, which is run by a couple friends of mine here in the Seattle area. They're a small press, Seattle-based publisher. And they have done a number of these before. So they could give me numbers. They're like, this is editing costs.
Okay.
These are physical copy costs.
Okay.
These are cover artist costs. And then, so this is your total for publishing a book. This is what you're going to want to ask for. And then Kickstarter takes a certain percentage.
Yeah.
I think it's 10%, 20%, something
Okay.
like that. It's significant, but you know, the kind of thing that you just need to take into account. And then you need to consider shipping costs. Shipping costs take up a lot,
especially right now,
of your Kickstarter, especially right now. Thanks, Trump. Good job, buddy. Anyway, screwed over the post office. All right, so
I have friends that work in the post office that literally. Well, I'm not going to get into that. Keep going.
You know what I'm saying. Anyway,
this is not that kind of podcast, but or show.
We're
or
not the
whatever
political stream,
right?
Anyway,
but you and I know.
Absolutely. So, what I'm saying is, you got to take all these things into account, and they could advise me on a good number for what I should look for. And the number that I'm looking for is actually enough, I hope, to go beyond just the first book and get into the additional books. If I meet the stretch goals, it's going to happen faster.
Okay.
It's going to happen like that, because the primary purpose of this Kickstarter is to build a community, is to, you know, get the interest out there, to get people reading, to get people involved and interested in what's going on. The money's great, but I've already written the book. I've already paid the editor. I've already paid the cover artist. I've already done all that because I'm a responsible writer. Like when I'm putting a thing together, I'm making sure people get paid.
Yeah.
Payment to these people is not contingent on the Kickstarter. But if the Kickstarter funds, when the Kickstarter funds, it's going to allow me to get all three of these books going much faster. If we hit the Kickstarter stretch goals for these books even faster, there is a tier on the Kickstarter rewards called Last Call. They're all named after like bar jargon.
Yeah.
Last Call is you get like a physical copy of the book and like a bunch of ebooks, but you also get an ebook for every Justice Vengeance novel that I write.
Oh.
From now until I stop doing it.
Okay.
Every Justice Vengeance novel that I write.
Yeah, yeah.
So if it's like a femme fatale that I write with Amanda, that it doesn't necessarily count that.
Okay.
I'll probably send that to you anyway, but that's not what I'm promising. I don't want to promise Amanda's work.
Right.
Okay. I can only promise my own work.
Right.
And like I said, we're talking like 12 novels here. This is a lot.
Yeah.
50 divided by 12, that's, 4 and less than $1 to get each of these novels. And like, I plan on this series going for a while. I got a set story to tell. I have a beginning, I have a middle, and I have an end. And I think that's something that comic books, especially comic books, but like long-running novel series often have trouble with, because they kind of get into a groove and then they're going to keep publishing books and keep drawing it out. No, I have a beginning, a middle, and an end. And when I hit the end, I'm done with these characters. I guess I could write, stuff that happens in the middle.
Yeah.
Right. That's totally possible. Spin-off stuff, team ups, that sort of thing.
Other characters?
But I have a specific story in mind.
Okay.
And so there's a plan. These books are going to happen. The Kickstarter mostly determines how fast they happen.
Okay.
And it determines how invested you get to be. Like if you back Libations for the Dead, I'm going to list you in the book. You are going to be in the acknowledgments of this book saying, these are my Kickstarter backers. These are the really awesome people who made this happen.
Right.
I am also going to, I will tell you this. I am going to do a superhero name for everyone who backs my Kickstarter. Like, you were going to be listed by your name, your superhero code name, and your last name in the acknowledgments. And it can be weird shit. It's fine. If you want to swear, I guess that's okay, but we're going to work on it together. If you're not a big fan of that, it's fine. I'll just list you by your name. But like, if you back the Kickstarter, you will get a superhero name. Either you or I or the two of us working together will design it, and that's going to be awesome.
Nice.
There are reward tiers for naming characters in the books. Specifically, I have a tier for, it's called Supergroup. Supergroup is like the Justice League of the Justice Vengeance universe.
Okay.
They're the team that Lady Vengeance used to belong to, that A-Girl's parents belong to, that Orestes' father belonged to. And they have this like long spanning legacy of heroism in the Pacific Northwest, basically, because they're based in Seattle. The Space Needle actually was their tower until the terrible event befell that destroyed Supergroup and was kind of the inciting background incident for all of this story that's going on. And if you pledge at the super tier level, and I think there are a couple left, you get to name one of those characters.
Oh.
Like, come up with their hero name, with their personal name, not their hero name. Hero name I've already established, but the personal name, that is going to be your mark eternally on the series.
Okay.
And I mean, it's got to be within reason. I don't want anybody to name like Hero McHero Face. I don't want any of that. But like, you see what I'm saying? I will happily name a character after you if that's what you like, or you know, another name that you think is cool, and I will again acknowledge you in the books. So
now I just want that to be mine. I just want to be Hero McHero Face. just because it's funny as hell and we brought it up here.
so in my day job, I work for Stryker, which is a medical device company, and I was talking with like just one of the functional teams today, and we do an icebreaker question, which is you know, a different question every week. And it fell to me to come up with a question for this week. And I said, okay, if you were a superhero, what would your superpower be? Which is a great question.
Yeah.
Like, everybody's familiar with the concepts of superheroes. They're impossible to ignore these days.
Yeah.
They fill the media, they fill the culture, and people came up with great concepts. There were a couple people who were like, yeah, I would start out as a hero, but I would definitely become a villain. And I'm like, yeah, it sounds like you would. And I then said, hey, I'm going to make a team in my Justice Vengeance universe called the Strike Team.
And it's going to be
STRYKE, and it's going to be all of those heroes that they came up with. So we'll see if anybody actually takes me up on that. But I think it'd be really cool.
That's great.
So, like, and I love doing stuff like that, man. I love, you know, involving people and bringing people into this universe, and because it's not just mine, it's everyone's.
Yeah.
It's Nate's, it's the other writers that he's brought in, it's the readers. You know, the purpose of fiction is to inspire. It's to give you a place to go, a refuge from your daily life, a source of ideas, any of this stuff. Like, that's what happened to me. That's how I became a writer. I was reading, I very distinctly remember reading Bob Salvatore's The Halfling's Gem and going, you know, this isn't how I would have had these events unfold. I would change it slightly in this such a way. And then that drove me to start writing books of my own about characters similar but not the same as those characters.
Yeah.
And I want to pass it forward. I want to, you know, pay it forward to other people to inspire them to create. Yes, exactly, TD in the chat. Instill wonder. That was a perfect way to phrase it. Thank you so much. To inspire people to come up with concepts and ideas and their own writing. Like, you know, Nick, this is why I want you to publish your story. This is why I want you to keep writing stuff. I am writing to inspire people to write more, because I think creative production is an important part of our world. It's an important part of what makes us people, what makes us human, you know.
Yeah.
Which I don't want to say that in a judgmental way. If you're not a particularly creative person, you don't, you know, your life isn't oriented around creating stuff, that's fine. You do you. But like for those of us who like to create things, there's no greater joy.
Right. Well, and some people don't realize what creating. I've had this conversation. Actually, one of the other episodes of Off the Pod we did was talking about it. We discussed like being creative, and they were like, "Yeah, I'm not." They said at one point, "I'm not creative like so and so or so and so. I can't draw. I can't write. I can't." And I'm like, "What are you talking about? You're a streamer that constantly has really good numbers, and you're super entertaining to watch what you do. You've created all of that, everything you did.
Oh my
That is
God.
creative. You have no idea. There are like people don't realize that they are creative. They don't have to be artists or sculptors or writers or poets to be creative.
Streaming is hard work, man. You know this. But like there's so much tech involved and so much performance and oh man, so much planning that goes into it. I have been running a game on the Dungeon Scrollers stream. I don't want to say that I've been running the Dungeon Scrollers stream because that is not true. Our tech guy, Yang Yang Wang, mostly
Yang's
runs
awesome.
the stream. Yang Yang is great.
I'm gonna have Yang Yang on this show.
Yes.
I had him on the Game
Yes.
Masters Workshop with Aaron and Ran and Held, which you guys can all
Oh my
find on
God.
YouTube. But I want
Oh
to
my
get him
God.
on this, just me and
I
him on
gotta
this.
see that episode because that would have been amazing. Yang Yang is, oh my God, long suffering producer essentially. He is the producer of the Dungeon Scrollers stream, and he's a tech guy. He's a performer. He plays in the games too.
Mhm.
Like that is so much work, and like producing on a stream is a full-time job,
Right.
really, especially if you're streaming every week or just on a regular basis at all. It takes so much effort, and I really respect you guys who could do this kind of thing. Like I will show up and run a game. Like I've been DMing for 30 years now,
Right.
and it is just second nature to me. But like making all of the magic happen, that is an art in and of itself. And I think we live in a society that kind of downplays our artistic and creative outlets
Yeah. I
and
agree.
says, no, you're just producing content to entertain people. Well, yeah, but you're still producing art. You're still creating.
What's
And that
another word for
is-
producing? Creating.
Exactly.
That's... Yeah, for sure.
So
All right, so you've got a I'm looking at it here. You've got a Intrigued About Vengeance pledge, $2 or more. You want to
Right.
track the Kickstarter, get your hands on quality files of exclusive KS artwork. Includes exclusive Justice Vengeance Kickstarter artwork.
Yep.
You've got the $5 pledge, which is I Demand Vengeance. You get a digital copy of Libations for the Dead, first in the Justice Vengeance series and related artwork. Includes an ebook of Libations for the Dead, exclusive Justice Vengeance Kickstarter artwork and files.
I've already written that book, so you know, and I've already had it edited, and we've got the cover art and everything. You can see it right there. It's behind me, although you probably see it on the stream better. And it's going to be delivered to you sometime in March, I expect. That's what my editor and publisher says. So yeah,
Okay.
that's coming right away. Easy.
Awesome. Your $15 pledge, $15 or more, I Crave Context. Get your hands on digital copies of Lady Vengeance's previous appearance. It includes an ebook of Libations for the Dead, an ebook of Eye for an Eye, ebook of Femmes Fatale, and the exclusive Justice Vengeance Kickstarter artwork.
Yeah. So like I said, she's appeared in a number of pieces, including 2 short novels that I wrote. Eye for an Eye, which is her first like novel length appearance, where she fights the Raven, a character from her past, and kind of befriends Jacob Stevens Stardust, who's a character in Cobalt City. He's like, I describe him as the Iron Man, Tony Stark of
Okay.
Cobalt City. Nate describes him as the Booster Gold of Cobalt City.
I like that.
The reality is somewhere in between.
Okay.
And he is.
If Booster
man,
Gold
yeah.
were Iron Man, I like it.
he is neutral good cinnamon roll. Okay, that's the kind of character he is. And then it's Lady Vengeance and Stardust interacting, and like she's real dark and pulls him a little bit toward the dark, and he's real light and pulls her away from the dark a little bit. And it's just, there's really good chemistry between those characters. Do not worry, they do not do it in the book.
But
That does not
outside the
mean
book,
that they
guys.
don't.
Sorry, just kidding.
It does not mean they don't do it eventually. Femmes fatale, I want to explain this because we're talking about craving context. Femmes fatale, so a couple years later, Jacob has this affair with this CEO, Ruby Killingsworth, greatest supervillain name ever, has this affair in Cobalt City, and it breaks up. His heart is broken. His family is damaged. He comes to visit Seattle. He tells Vivienne his sob story, and she's like, you know what? I'm going to go to Cobalt City and I'm going to kick that woman's ass. Let's do this. I am Lady Vengeance. That's what I do. She goes to Cobalt City. She meets with Ruby Killingsworth, and they discover in the course of their interaction that they have far more chemistry with each other than either of them had with Jacob. And the whole book is this friends to rivals to lovers to friends to enemies all over the place. And it's just amazing. Ruby is Amanda Cherry's signature character, and Lady Vengeance is my signature character. We've talked about this before, but it essentially came out of, we were doing this anthology of team ups.
Okay.
Because that's a superhero thing,
Yeah,
right?
for
People
sure.
work together
World's
to accomplish
greatest,
a goal.
yeah.
And we said, hey, what would happen if Vivienne and Ruby teamed up? We're in the same room together. What would happen? And Amanda said, well, they'd either kill each other or they'd fall into bed together. And I said, why not both? And that is where the novel came from. So that's what Femmes Fatale is all about. Femmes Fatale takes place after Libations for the Dead, more or less at the same time as Public Enemy.
Okay.
So
Nice.
in terms of chronology.
Your $20 pledge or more, manifest my fears. Get yourself a physical copy of Libations for the Dead. Includes physical copy of Libations for the Dead and all of the previous stuff we've listed. I'm just gonna skip over all the previous stuff we mentioned instead of rereading it all over and over again.
Yeah. So if you like that new book smell, this is the one.
Awesome. And then pledge US $30 or more. This is my pledge. Build my library. Physical copies of Eye for an Eye, Femmes Fatale, and Libations for the Dead. All copies signed. Includes physical copy of Libations for the Dead, physical copy of Eye for an Eye, physical copy of Femmes Fatale, and exclusive Justice Vengeance Kickstarter artwork.
I will take the hit and the sacrifice of going up to Amanda's house and drinking some of her excellent Scotch selection and petting her amazingly adorable dog to get her to sign copies of Femmes Fatale to send out to people who pledge with this tier.
Ooh.
I will make that sacrifice for you. I care about you, audience. I really do.
And the puppy dog. What kind of puppy dog did she got?
So it's some kind of specific breed. Man, I don't remember exactly.
Okay. Is it a big dog or a small dog or a medium dog?
Small
dog.
Very cute. Like it looks so cute that it's like a stuffed animal level of cute.
Okay. Does it have like the big,
but
the big eyes and the?
It's got the big eyes and the droopy ears, and it just has that perpetually slightly sad look that makes you want to just
picture. Yeah.
Very cuddly. Anyway.
$50 or more pledge is called Last Call.
What good timing.
Yeah. It's like it's emphasizing the last call. You get digital copies of Eye for an Eye, Femmes Fatale, Libations for the Dead, and all Justice Vengeance novels past and future, including and beyond the Kickstarter but you've said that you have written.
That I have written.
That you have written.
Mm-hmm. Well, that I will write.
Or that you will write. Yeah. So that's a really cool one. I might have
Would
to
you like to make me your slave?
I might have to go and change
Pledge
that
it
one.
this tier.
Yeah, I might have to go and change my tier to that one. Pledge $75 or more. Buy around for a bookstore. Get 10 physical Get 10 physical copies of Libation of the Dead. This reward is intended primarily for bookstores. Includes Just Vengeance Kickstarter artwork and 10 physical copies of Libations for the Dead. That's actually kind of a cool idea to be able to give out like a bulk whatever for stores or
I won't pretend that I came up with that idea. Kickstarters often do this kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah, it just for like physical bookstores that want to sell, a bunch of copies, then get fairly inexpensive copies that way.
Right. Scarblade says, how long do we have? Scarblade, I think it's 5 or 6 days.
Yes. So it ends 7 a.m. about Pacific time Sunday.
Okay.
So Saturday this week is the last full day to back the Kickstarter.
Okay. And you're so close. You're so close. Go do it,
Oh,
Scarblade.
yeah, absolutely.
Go do it. Go
I'm
sign
under
up.
$600. Like come in and kick me in a few bucks and let's make this happen. That's
for sure.
I am so I hate marketing and salesmanship stuff. I just want to write books and stuff. But yeah, if you want to get in on this, you definitely should. I think you'll enjoy this book. The people I've sent it to, like I said, have read it compulsively and have, blazed through the book in like an afternoon. And then they're like, so where's the next one? And I'm like, oh man, fine. I better get writing. And I've started writing the prequel novel, which is called, again, Girl Vengeance Downward Spiral. That is the $500 tier of the stretch goal. $500 stretch goal will be I focus on writing that novel, and I get that one out. And that is about Lady Vengeance as a teenager. And she is the most goth punk teenager ever. The first chapter, which is called Criminal by Fiona Apple, starts with her arrested for fighting with some white supremacists outside a bar. And like the police detective is trying to talk to her, and Girl Vengeance just keeps looking at her like, says nothing until Tony DeSantis, the Raven, shows up to bail her out, rescue her from the interrogation room. And Vivienne looks up at him and she says, hey, you want to fight some cops? And then the next scene is them fighting their way out of the precinct. Not because, the cops are bad, although it is the Seattle PD that we're talking about, but mostly because they can. They are very anti-authoritarian punk sort of people. And this is set in 1995. It's if you're a little bit nostalgic for the 90s and, the music of the 90s, this is that book. It's great.
Scarblade says, okay, what is the price again? Scarblade, the price ranges depending on where you pledge. But I think you can get the digital copy of Libations for the Dead as low as $5, but you can get physical copies. You can get other ebooks of the other ones. So click the link and you can see the pledges on the right-hand side. I personally did the 30, but I might up it to a 50. Although I'm thinking if I can afford it, maybe I'll do the 75 and give away some books on stream. We will see.
Oh man, that would be amazing.
We will see what I can think of. What I can.
Yeah, Scarblade, whatever works for you.
Whatever works for you.
Just that's why there's a whole range of tiers.
Yeah, for sure. The next one we read the $75. We read everything up to the $75. If you really want to get in, if you really want to help out. This is the Bartender Special. I love these names, by the way. Very, very, very well themed, I think. A digital copy of Libations for the Dead, plus 1 hour consultation with me personally about a story you're writing, a campaign you're running, or whatever you want to chat about. Damn it, do I owe you $100 for today? Gosh darn it.
No, it's all right. It's all right, buddy. You get the friend 5-finger discount.
Okay, sounds good. Please forgive me. I get paid Thursday. No, that's all right. No problem. No worries.
Don't worry, buddy. It's all good.
Darn it. And then there's the
No, that is okay. So I am a writer and a game designer and an editor, and I've been around the block on a lot of creative things. And like I can spend some time talking with you about your story and get you some ideas about if whatever level of story you're working with. Are you working with a campaign that you want to run and you want to just run some ideas, bounce some ideas back and forth, and we can discuss? Are you talking about a story that you've written and you're looking for how to maybe publish it? Is it something that, you know, like a book that you're working on and you're not sure where to take it? You know, whatever you want to talk about, I think I can be of assistance. I've actually worked as a professional writing coach in many capacities before, and yeah, that's what that's all about. And if you just want to hang out and talk about geeky stuff, that's also cool.
yeah, there you go.
I am totally down for that.
That's awesome. That's a Scarblade is also a streamer.
And yeah, it's based on, you know, Vivienne, who's a professional bartender. Like that's the kind of thing. People
Right.
come in and they buy a drink and they talk about whatever they're thinking about. And so that's what that tier is all about.
Yeah. Scarblade is also a streamer who has taken some time off from role playing and has just gotten back and was like, was chatting with me on the side. It's like, I want to get back into it, but I'm a little trepidatious. And I'm like, well, I had this series called The Game Master's Workshop, and one Erik Scott de Bie was in the first episode along with Ed Greenwood and Chris Jackson. But there's a whole series of those, and yeah, so I mean, you can go and look at those, and that goes for everybody. You can go check them all out. They're all on YouTube. You can watch them all. They all have amazing guests. I've taken a little bit of time off because of COVID, so scheduling the next one's been pushed back, but there will be more. Yes, I know. I used you as a reference. Okay. Wow.
Awesome.
Your next pledge is $250 or more. The Super Group. All rewards of Last Call, plus I will name a member of the legendary Super Group after you. Name to be determined by discussion between patron and author. That's a good thing to put in there, a little parentheses there within.
No hero McHero face.
No hero McHero face. Super McSuper guy. That includes pretty much all of the previous stuff we talked about, it looks like.
Yep.
And then the big one. The last big pledge. You have one backer at the big pledge.
I do.
You need 3 more for all you rich people that are in stream. Or not, or people that just like, I have enough to help with this. Demand vengeance. All rewards of Last Call, plus I will run an exclusive Justice Vengeance tabletop role-playing session for you and up to 4 of your fellows. Up to a 4-hour game will be run online from anywhere in the world, scheduling to be determined between the 2 of us. We'll try and set up a game for some point in 2023. That is freaking cool, honestly. Let's be honest. That is whoever the current one backer is, and then whoever is going to get those last 3. That I think that's a super cool thing to have.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I've been a DM GM for 30 years now, and you can, if you would like to see some object lessons and examples of my work, you can check out the Dungeon Scrawlers stream, where I ran a 3-year campaign with a number of other writer types, and it was pretty great. There are also a bunch of one-shots. I actually did a one-shot in the Justice Vengeance world just the other week, set in my Justice Vengeance world using a 5e D&D hack and using the same characters from the story. And I thought it went pretty well. I mean, it was real fun, and lots of cool stuff happened. So yeah, that's a good example of what it might be like. And I tend to be kind of a sandboxy sort of DM, and very adaptive to what players want to do and where they want to go with things. So
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
You touched on it earlier. You were talking about you are a white male.
Yes.
How is it?
That is true. Look at me.
How is it? I don't know how to put. How do you put into perspective writing from the female perspective, or writing, as a black male? And I asked this to Chris Jackson earlier, when we had him on the podcast, because he has his book the Last of Us, where he's writing the main character is female. How do you write that and not get blowback?
Okay, well, first of all, let me caveat this by saying that I am not an expert. I am not a master at this.
Right.
I screw up from time to time. I own that and I accept that, and I go into it knowing that that is the risk.
Mm-hmm.
Now, basically, I think a lot of writing comes out of knowing and interacting with people, listening to them, watching them, talking with them, hearing their stories, reading, researching, analyzing.
Right.
As I said, I've been with my girlfriend, now wife, for 20 years now. I feel like I have a pretty good sense of her as a person. I no longer think that men are from Mars and women are from Venus. That kind of thing is ridiculous. Yeah, we are, we do have different pressures and different expectations that are set upon us. Researching these kind of things, listening to people tell their stories about their various experiences and the different expectations that have been set upon them, things that they have been praised for, things that they have been harassed for, things that they have been expected to do, oppression that they have dealt with. All of these things I read about, I interact with people, I ask questions, I listen. That's the key. We white dudes, we basically run America. I don't know if you're aware, but like most of the government, most CEOs, most people in power look like us.
Yeah.
Okay. And we are not always aware of our blind spots, and we are not always aware of situations and perspectives that are not our own. And so I found that the most effective strategy is to listen to people and to think about what they're saying, to really analyze it and internalize it. Ask questions if the time is right for asking questions, but generally speaking, listening is better than speaking. We white dudes, as I see it, have a responsibility to do this because we're on top. We shouldn't necessarily be, right? I firmly believe that everyone should be equal, but I don't take that to mean that everyone is equal. We are in a situation where we white dudes are in charge. We want everyone to be like us. We should want everyone to be like us, but we don't always act that way. We don't always leave avenues and perspectives and opportunities to advance and to become more powerful, to become more wealthy, to become more comfortable, to be treated better by police, by authorities, by our politicians. And so a major part of my writing aesthetic is to embrace the rainbow of human experience, to present characters who are different from myself, to present stories that affect people other than me and in different ways. And I don't know, I've just always been writing about people who are different from myself. Characters who are too similar to me, I find very boring, and because I don't really have much to say about them. It's my own life. It doesn't entertain me. It doesn't interest me. It's pushing beyond. It's pushing to different perspectives and different directions, different paths that I really enjoy. And so that said, there is the practicality of like, how do you write about someone who is very unlike you and doesn't isn't you? How do you do that? How do you do that in an authentic way? And basically, it's tough. It requires research. It requires listening. It requires analysis. There are some writers online who offer classes about how to write about people unlike yourself.
Mm-hmm.
There's this great class. It's called Writing the Other. I'm going to see if I can find a link for you. Yeah, it's Nisi Shal who wrote a book about this, and I think teaches the class. It might be Yeah. Yeah. All right. I will share this link with Nick, and he
Hold
will
on, give me a second here.
he'll put it
I'm
in
gonna
the
fix
doobly-doo.
something for you real quick.
Oh man, are you gonna give me the power to put links in there?
You now should have the power without ever having to worry about doing a sub.
Okay. Go to this
because
link.
you are now a VIP, as you should be,
Sweet.
considering you've been on so
Sweet.
many shows and helped out so often.
All right. Nisi Shaw offers this class, which is all about, well, it's called Writing the Other, and it's all about writing the other. It's about understanding representation, diversity, all those sorts of things, and about how to kind of respectfully, thoughtfully, and in an authentic way, as best you can, write about people other than yourself. There could be racial differences, gender differences, ability differences, writing disabled characters, blind characters, deaf characters, all of that. You will find links and suggestions and classes at that site. I highly recommend it for anyone who is looking to become a writer, especially but not only if you're looking to write about people other than yourself. Because if all your characters look like you, it's probably going to be pretty boring.
Yeah.
I mean, any one of us only has so much to say. It's really when the group of us get together that we can come up with something really cool. So, oh my God, I just want to point out there's a class offered through Writing the Other called Writing Native American Characters, How Not to Do a Rowling. I really I really enjoy that. Yeah, we have over the last few years had plenty of object lessons of authors and writers who do not respect their subject material and do not respect people of groups and perspectives that are different from their own. And it is us really cringe, man. Try to avoid it if you can.
Yeah,
you know,
sure.
if you're trying to represent, if you're trying to present an authentic picture of our world, you have to acknowledge that our world is full of endless variety. It's full of so many different kinds of people, so many different perspectives, and so many different life paths. And not presenting those characters, not representing them in your work, is just a certain amount of just inauthenticity. It's just, you're not really telling a real story. You're telling a very limited perspective, and that's, yeah. So that's what I recommend.
For sure. Yeah, that's great. And I specifically asked that because I know that's come up in the Q&As, the post-stream Q&As for some of the podcasts we've done. It's come up where an author writes a female character, a male character. It was a major conversation when we had Chris Jackson on because of his thing. And I was like, I want to ask Erik, because I know no matter how I put that question, that you're going to knock it out of the park anyhow, at least in my opinion, because we have very similar views, world views. And but I figured you'd be able to put it in a context that would be understandable to people that are watching. Sometimes I have a hard time tackling that kind of subject matter, but I watch your subject matter on Facebook and Twitter and all of that. I'm like, just every time you say anything, it's so profound and so understanding that I'm like, I got to ask him this question, and it does relate specifically to your books. So that are on the Kickstarter. So welcome on in, Isaac, as well. Welcome in.
I really appreciate that, Nick. I do want to say that I only see myself as the intermediary to other white people. Right. So like, white dudes are more likely to listen to other white dudes. That's what the research shows. So it is an important responsibility of myself to try and filter some of that stuff to my fellow white dudes, who are more likely to listen to me than to primary sources.
Right.
And yes, I in the chat we mentioned that our world is full of injustice, evil, and corruption, and that is definitely true. That is something that you will find in my books, and people are working against those things.
Yeah.
And no, this is not white people are evil. sort of thing. Like, white guilt is a rhetorical device that bad faith actors are trying to push on us to keep us from caring about these things. Human experience is varied. It is, like I said, the rainbow of experience. And, embracing that is what lends authenticity and strength to your work. And I think it is incumbent upon everyone and worth it to everyone to try and expand your horizons, to see things from perspectives other than your own, to learn about people very different from yourselves, etc. And it's especially for us white people, because we are used to thinking of ourselves as like the moral default, the racial default, we're the morally right ones, and everyone else is like a mutation of us.
Right.
Please, nobody clip that. That's not what I'm saying.
Yeah.
We are not. That is not the case. Okay. Like we are not the default. There is no default. The default human is
human,
a rainbow of experience.
Right.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's so hard to tackle because like we're white.
Absolutely.
We can't see. We don't know those experiences because we haven't experienced those experiences. All we can do is help them, the people that have had those experiences, and try to understand what they've gone through and try to be there for them and support them in any way we can.
Absolutely. And again, I'm not an expert. I'm not trying to moralize or
Same
anything.
here.
Like, I'm just saying there's a lot to deal with, and there's a lot to learn, and there's a lot to listen to. And please do. It will make you better as a person. It will make you better as a creative. It will make you better as an artist.
Starblade says that she is a white woman with 2 biracial kids, and she has to see she sees the differences every single day.
Yeah. Hell yeah. Totally. Sure. I totally hear that.
Empathy. I think empathy is a huge factor in everything that we should be as humans, but
I agree. Well, and here's the thing, just one thing on this point.
Yeah.
Empathy is a skill. It's not just an innate trait.
Right.
It is a skill that you need to practice and learn and expand. Right?
Mm-hmm.
That's where it comes down to. And the way you do that is by listening to other people, by trying to see other perspectives, by challenging yourself to embrace things that might be difficult for you to think about, and to sit with things that might be painful to think about.
Right.
Humans have this thing where our brains are hardwired to fight against cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance is painful for us, but it's only through pushing through that we can really start to understand something from someone else's perspective. And that is what I think creativity is all about. That's what I think art is about. It's about communicating with other people, seeing things from other perspectives, seeing the way we ourselves are limited in our perspective, and our lives are limited. Even if we think we're on top, we still have so much to learn, so much to experience, so much to understand. And I mean, kind of my writing aesthetic is about pushing to that level of understanding, of seeing through other people's eyes, and seeing that we are all people. We're all necessary to the world going,
Yeah.
and we're all equally valid.
Yeah. Sorry, I can't say more. I'm like, do I say anything? No, nope. That's that's a great place to put that. Everybody watching the show, go and check out Erik Scott de Bie's Kickstarter, Justice Vengeance Superhero Book Series. Hopefully it will be a big series. But yeah, go and check it out. Go ahead and back the book series, and also go and check out all of his other works. It's awesome.
Thanks.
It's
yeah, no, I've been working toward this point for 20 years now, and this is where my writing is going. It's toward Man, I said this on an interview recently that it sounds a little like both arrogant and naive, but I'm trying to change the world here. I'm trying to expand people's understanding and expand people's empathy, as you brought it out, you know, to try and get to a point where we can start to understand each other. And I'm doing my own small part in that regard.
Yeah.
So I hope it works.
Yeah, well, and people can see that in your writings, because everybody says that the things that you write show a little piece of us, or a lot of piece of us. And I've noticed in all of your books, at least the ones that I've read, because it's hard for me to read all of everybody's books, but the ones that I've read and the stories, the books and short stories of yours that I've read, it totally, I can tell it's you. So, and they're all really awesome, and you can kind of see the different points of view from people, all kinds of people, whether it's going all the way back to Ghostwalker, or the Waterdeep book,
Down
Shadow, yes, all the way up, The Awakened, and now the series. So I wish you all of the best, Erik, and of course I'm always going to be there to support whatever projects you got going on in whatever way I can. So everybody go in, back the Kickstarter, and even if you don't get paid for 2 days, Kickstarter doesn't charge you till the time is up and it's passed. So
that
go
is
and
true.
sign up now.
That is a very good point. If and when the Kickstarter funds, you will not be charged until it's actually funded. So
go and sign up now. Sign
yeah,
up now.
Absolutely.
Get it in there. We've already had one person from the show tonight walk in there and back. Go in, if you did back in whatever way you can help. And if you can't back it, share it on social media. Share it on your Facebook page, your Twitter page, your Instagram, your TikTok, your Twitch stream. Go ahead and share the Kickstarter to people, even if you can't afford it yourself. And if it gets backed and we can get it off the ground, then you can go and hopefully get it later when you can afford it. So yeah, Erik, again, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Nick. It's been a real pleasure. I always love talking with you, man. And your audience has been pretty great. So I appreciate it. Thank you, everyone who's been with us for all this time, and best to you. If the Kickstarter interests you, go ahead and back it. If you like, please feel free to share it. I very much appreciate it.
Awesome. Well, again, guys, you can also go check him out on Dungeon Scrawlers every week. He's over there role playing or GMing, usually GMing, but I've gotten to see a few times where you got to be a player. How is that for you, by the way, before we leave? Has it been fun to be able to be a player once in a while?
Oh, absolutely. I have this tendency to run like just totally irredeemable murder hobos whenever it's my turn to play, because like I have just so much like just get it all out, man. Hopefully I don't disrupt games when I do that, but yeah, it's fun to be a player as a long time DM. So
yeah, definitely, for sure. I'm getting that right now. I have no games that I'm running. I'm just playing and I'm really enjoying it. So yeah, the stress of GMing is a thing. So all right, everyone, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you all for joining us tonight. Again, every Monday you can have a talk show right here, whether it's Off the Pod, which is tonight, which is the Not a Podcast. We're not a podcast, but we're kind of a podcast kind of show, or the actual podcast, which is the Epic Realms podcast, where we interview famous, awesome, cool people such as Erik Scott de Bie. Next Monday, we're going to be joined by Kobold Press's Wolfgang Bauer. We're going to talk about Kobold Press. We're going to talk about Black Flag. We're going to talk about all their RPG stuff. We might even talk about the ORC, the gaming license, all of that debacle. So we'll be doing that next week on Monday. Of course, you can find all of our past podcasts anywhere you get podcasts: Apple, iTunes, Spotify, Audible, all kinds of stuff. Sometimes we have other people come back. Every Tuesday is video game night. Tomorrow we'll be doing video games, whether it's going to be Cyberpunk or the new Dark and Darker that's in beta form. And Wednesday is Tabletop RPG night, so you can go ahead and join us for Tabletop RPGs. Thank you, Isaac, for the follow. Much appreciated. So thank you guys so much for being here. We're going to go and raid out. We're going to go raid another RPG stream. They are called Guild Superior. They're an amazing kind of newer RPG stream. They've got a wide range of groups that role play, including a couple people I know personally and have worked with. So go ahead and join Guild Superior, say hello. They are doing what's called Monday Night Mayhem, and it looks like a D&D 5th edition homebrew one-shot. So we will go ahead and join them. Again, go check out Erik Scott de Bie. His Kickstarter is running right now. You've got about 6 days left. And then also check out the Dungeon Scrawlers Twitch stream. So for Erik, I am Nick. Have a great night, everybody, and take care.